Chapter 17. Plan B. Vampires. She, Sanzu Dayu, the killer of vampires, had become a captive to them. Again. The thought was a rising panic in her breast, a knowing that her miserable life was about to return to the depravities of her captivity in Mongolia. Not again, she thought, remembering her brother, her sister, her mother, all bought, sold, and traded like chattel to thirdlanders. She had gone to free them once she escaped, and only found her sister still alive. His brother had been disemboweled for killing one of his captors, then left to die slowly with only a brief few seconds of sunlight every day for 2 years until he passed, as an example to his fellow captives. Her mother had committed suicide by throwing herself into the jaws of a possessed thirdlander in her captor's dungeon. And her sister, while still alive, was now a ghost to the world, haunting the highest reaches of the Himalayas to avoid humanity and the Darklanders. After losing her family, after watching her sister's dead eyes as she rocked in a cave in the Himalayas, Dayu had dedicated the rest of her life to killing them. It had fallen apart in Russia. She had heard of an old vampire nest and had decided to strike in the middle of the day, as she had hundreds of times before. But this one had been different. She had gotten word of an ancient vampire lord in St. Petersburg and had flown there to kill him. And Viktor Lebedev had been the first vampire that had managed to slip past her defenses and touch her since escaping the Mongolian nest 800 years before. She'd killed hundreds of them, thousands in the 8 centuries that followed her escape from Mongolia. And not only had the Faguang not worked on him, but he too had been skilled in Shaolin Kung Fu. He'd been strong and fast and completely immune to her Faguang. Because, of course, he already had another 3-legged crow in chains in his basement that her source hadn't bothered to tell her about. She had been 3/4 of the way through destroying his nest when Victor had slipped up behind her, despite the Faguang. And, in mere seconds, he'd slid his fangs into her side and enthralled her. He'd actually kissed her as she went limp, falling into his arms like a harlot.
"Ah, you must be the famous vampire killer,"
Victor had murmured in her ear.
"I heard you were in town."
His nest had been given explicit instructions not to harm her, and Victor had made her wear her swords on her hip, because it pleased him to see her wear her decorations as she served him tea and rutted on him in bed. He hadn't, at least, shared her. That much had been a blessing. Now, though, 4.5 years after her capture, after the novelty of having a vampire slayer as a personal servant to show off to his Russian mobster friends eventually wore off, Dayu had been sold to slavers bound for America. Enslaved again. Fodder for vampires. And unlike Victor, who had looked at her more as a trophy to be shown off than a plaything to be savaged, she knew these vampires were not going to be gentle. She remembered the way the Japanese vampire had called her a whore, how he had casually discussed the captives like they had no more importance than different cuts of meat. It was Mongolia all over again. Mongolia. With no way out. She wore ensorcelled steel, and she hadn't gotten a good look, but she was reasonably sure the female had been a queen. Thinking of the helpless devotion of the Nachtdanslicher, a panic began building in her breast. And it was all Dayu could do to keep from thrashing like an animal as the slavers stopped the vehicle and opened the sliding door. Though she was blindfolded and gagged, her arms locked in steel behind her back, Dayu kicked at her captors when they pulled her out of the van. They grabbed her easily and hefted her up and out of the back, then dropped her to the ground, her chin hitting the dirt hard, with sharp gravel digging into her naked breasts and stomach.
"Be careful with her!"
The Japanese vampire who had called her a whore snapped. Dayu tried to kick at their legs, their feet, the ankles, anything. But without being able to see, they simply laughed and danced around her. She was hyperventilating now, knowing the sorts of things that awaited her in her new home. Her captors had taken great pleasure in telling her of the depravities that went on in that basement. One of their best customers, constantly having to replenish their supply. Then her captors were slamming the back door on the van, and she heard gravel crunch as they walked back to the front. The engine still running. She heard the increase in RPMs, then heard the tires pop against the gravel as they eased away from her. Then the car engine vanished in the distance, leaving her alone with the vampires. Then she heard another crunch on the gravel, slow and easy, and Dayu froze. It grew close enough to kick, and she twisted and tried, her ankles locked together with rope. Surprisingly, her feet hit nothing.
Shh!
The Japanese vampire cried.
Shh! Shh!
She felt him kneeling beside her, near her chest, out of range of her feet. Very gently, he touched her face. Dayu screamed a curse at him through the gag and rolled away, kicking at the air where she thought he had been.
Come,
The Japanese vampire said, grabbing her by a foot and holding it in place.
ancestors, please. Let me take off your blindfold and get that thing out of your mouth so we can talk.
Dayu went still, wary and panting.
Shh. Calm.
Very gently, the man reached forward and started unbuckling the blindfold and the gag. As soon as they were no longer covering her face and eyes, Dayu sucked in a huge breath of air to scream. The Japanese man's hand came down on her mouth suddenly, and he lifted the other in a fist to strike her. Dayu cringed and twisted away, waiting for the blow. A sudden light hit her face, as bright as the sun. Confused, Dayu opened her eyes. The Japanese man's fist, which he was holding up for her, was shining with a brilliant, glorious energy. Dayu felt her mouth fall open as she looked at the man's fist, to his face, and back. It wasn't a spell. It wasn't blood magic causing the air around his hand to glow. His flesh was glowing, as magnificent as the sun.
You will not scream?
The Yatagarasu asked softly. Her mouth fell open, and she gave a small shake of her head. Yet, still, he kept his hand against her lips, and his oddly striped brown eyes were timid.
I wore a facade when I entered the slave den,
He said softly.
I do not think you're a whore, Sanzu.
Then, very slowly, he removed his hand.
We were trying to save you.
Dayu stared up at the Yatagarasu a long moment, then twisted to find the vampire standing a few yards away, watching them with interest. Then Dayu noticed the color of the vampire's flesh, the golden tinge mingling with the silver. Silver? That is a queen? She gasped, rolling up against the Yatagarasu's knees in her haste to get away from the vampire. The Yatagarasu caught her and helped her sit up.
Yes, Sanzu, a queen. And yes, I've been feeding her.
She enthralled you, Dayu said in horror. Honored ancestors, a vampire queen. A young one, too, by the look of her. Probably only then building her harem. And with 2 golden crows enthralled. The Yatagarasu held her in place and said,
Not enthralled. I drank of her poison. As will you, if you choose to feed her.
Food for a third lander. Again. Dayu started panting and attempted to pull away, rolled to her feet. Something.
Not enthralled. Look at me. Tell me what you see.
Dayu froze at the sharpness to his voice. Slowly, she turned to the Yatagarasu, then saw the bleached ripples in his eyes, the streaks of silver just then starting to show in his hairline. Because she couldn't believe she had heard him correctly, she said, You chose to feed her? And now that she was looking, he looked paler and more lifeless than most men, which is what had, at first glance, made her think he was a vampire.
It's a wrong story, but she freed me. As I'm about to free you. We're going to give you the choice to stay or go. If you stay, I will make you drink of her poison so she cannot enthrall you by accident.
Dayu's heart started pounding. He said they were going to free her. Suddenly, her entire world had narrowed to that one simple fact.
Truthfully, I need some help. I don't think I can last another 2 weeks feeding her alone. If you stayed and helped me, Sanzu, I would be greatly indebted to you.
Dayu narrowed her eyes. He wanted her to let a vampire feed on her. Willingly. He must be sick or insane. She almost told him he was dreaming, but managed to keep her mouth in check, knowing that he'd be more likely to release her if he thought she was going to cooperate. Though she had no intention of doing any such thing, she reluctantly said, "I could drink of the queen's venom?" The relief on the Yatagarasu's face was pitiful.
Yes.
He said, putting a key in the padlock at her wrists, freeing them.
We'll also get the collar off your neck. My daimyo has a spinning device that will cut it if you can hold still.
Every muscle in Dayu's body went stiff. "I will hold still."
We're going to free you. Don't run.
"I won't," Dayu lied. "And I don't know how this vampire enthralled you. But when I find ensorcelled blades, I will return and kill her for you, Yatagarasu. Clearly you're brainwashed, or under a compulsion and need to be freed of the spell." She knew that no three-legged crow would ever break bread with a vampire of his own free will. It was revolting, the very antithesis of their natures, so clearly he was not in control of his faculties.
Even if you don't want to feed her,
The Yatagarasu said, his eyes pleading with her.
please, don't run.
"I won't run," Dayu said, trying not to let her desperation show. "Cut it off." As Masaaki had instructed before her arrival, Bonnie stayed a respectful distance from the new Yatagarasu. Even now, she was standing beside the couch as Masaaki cut the collar with the grinder against the wall, throwing sparks across the living room. As he did, he told the Chinese chick how they were going to find her a place to live and get her some clothes and give her a stipend for her services. And all the while, Bonnie watched the woman's face, and she knew. Masaaki didn't know, but Bonnie did. Dayu was too eager to please, too happy, too easy to laugh at his nervous jokes. And sure enough, when Masaaki cut the final piece of metal free and smiled and went to help her sit up, the woman shifted to crow form, jumped out of her bonds, launched into the air, and flew out the broken front door window of her parents' house. Very slowly, the huge grin on Masaaki's face faded, and he lowered his head to look at the grinder in his hands. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he set the grinder down, got up, went over to the door, and looked outside. After several minutes of silence, he turned from the window, lifted Bonnie's coat from the rack, and threw it to her.
Let's go, daimyo.
His voice was dull and lifeless.
She's not coming back.
"Let's stay here for a few hours," Bonnie offered, agonized by the disappointment in his face. "Until it's time to go to Aikido practice. Maybe she'll come back, Masaaki." For a long moment, Masaaki simply stood there by the door, Bonnie's coat in his hands. Then he shrugged and put her jacket back on the rack and went to kneel beside the sofa, facing the front door. When Bonnie tried to make conversation in the hours that followed, he simply grunted or gave her as brief a response as possible, usually a single word. The Yatagarasu didn't come back. When the time came for Aikido lessons, Masaaki simply got to his feet, went to the wall, retrieved her jacket, and threw it to her.
Aikido lessons, daimyo.
Then he pulled open the door and went to the car, defeat all over his features. Bonnie followed, watched Masaaki stumble several times in Aikido practice, and again a couple hours later in Kendo practice. Once they were in the car again that night, headed home, she cleared her throat.
I don't want to hear it, Wonko. My penance is to feed you. Even if that means my death.
"Okay, sure, whatever," Bonnie said, because she had long ago realized that it was futile to argue with the samurai about cleansing his honor and dying needlessly. "I was actually going to suggest that we go to the grocery store for some multivitamins and electrolytes. Get you souped up on Gatorade and vitamins. Might help."
I want tea.
Masaaki said.
I'm almost out.
If there was one thing that Bonnie had learned about samurai, they drank tea like a racehorse. What was worse, Masaaki had found a bottle of kombucha tea on a rack in a gas station, and upon tasting it, had decided that he would make it. And nothing Bonnie had been able to say had kept him from filling her brand new cellar with a dozen gallon-sized glass bottles of the nastiest, most putrid-looking brew she had ever seen. It had scum floating on the top of it, and he drank it with relish. Bonnie shuddered. Do you have to make that disgusting stuff? Masaaki picked up a discarded kombucha bottle from the floorboards.
Says it has all the vitamins and minerals that I need right here.
He tapped the eye-catching label. The entire bottle, Bonnie noted, had been covered with little Japanese scribbles from his dictionary. Bonnie grimaced. That's just what he needed to learn. Modern marketing propaganda on the wondrous, beneficial qualities of fermented tea. Look, I'm getting you some real food. You can't survive on just tea. You're not Chuck Norris. Masaaki frowned at her.
I can survive on sunlight.
Bonnie's mouth fell open. Holy crap. You might actually have him beat. She considered that a long moment, tapping her finger to her jaw, then shook her head. Nah, he's still cooler. Then she pulled to a stop at a light and twisted to jam her finger into Masaaki's meaty chest. And you, my samurai friend, are going to eat some real food. Living off sunlight may be all hunky-dory most of the time, but you're feeding a vampire, so you gotta replace all those red blood cells. Masaaki frowned at her.
I like tea. I need another few boxes to refresh the kombucha batches downstairs.
Bonnie sighed. Fine, so we'll get tea and multivitamins and fruit. She thumped his chest again. And you will start eating it.
I eat food. I have to shit. It's uncomfortable.
Bonnie opened her mouth, then shut it again. She thumped his pec again. Everybody shits! The Shogun shits. You will be eating real food, not sugar water. Got it? Masaaki grunted and picked up a judo manual, pointedly ignoring her. Narrowing her eyes, Bonnie drove them to a grocery store and parked, then told the samurai to stay in the car. Masaaki yawned, tossed the judo manual into the back seat with the mastiff, and got out of the car with her. Sprawled out in the back, taking up every inch of the seat, Angus sniffed the judo manual and then shoved it off of his back onto the floor. Bonnie watched Masaaki calmly close his door and adjust the swords on his belt. What do you think you're doing?
What if you get attacked again? I need to be nearby to rescue you.
Bonnie rolled her eyes and gestured to the parking lot. This is a public place. They have cameras and security guards, as well as tiny guardian elves. Nobody's stupid enough to attack someone in a store, Masaaki. There's too many witnesses. Even this late at night, just after sunset, the parking lot had tons of people in it, most of whom were wearing the bright clothes and the shorts, sneakers, t-shirt combos of out-of-state tourists. Nice summertime evenings in Alaska were always active and busy. On sunny days, people went shopping or hiking at 10 or 11 at night and didn't think anything of it.
I'm your bodyguard. How am I going to guard your body if I'm sitting in the car with that demonkin's mutt breathing down my neck?
Oh, damn it, fine, Bonnie said, because in truth, having so much money sitting in the back was making her uncomfortable. Aside from Masaaki's splurges on martial arts books and war paraphernalia, she'd actually cut back on her spending, trying to keep anyone from noticing. She'd been getting a small instead of a large coffee at Sleepy Dog, and had taken to parking the Mercedes out behind the building so Josh and the other baristas wouldn't see her driving a $200,000 car. For the last week, she had been considering buying a really crappy old beater car so nobody saw her driving a Mercedes. Having that much money just didn't feel secure. Like she suddenly needed 20 guys with submachine guns and a train of intimidating black SUVs wherever she went, just to keep some crazy from deciding she would make an excellent hostage or kidnapping victim. So, though she would never admit it to his face, having Masaaki around just made her feel safer. Even walking around in a damn kendogi and manskirt, toting around 3 swords in the middle of Fred Meyer, Masaaki had become a comforting presence, something she could rely on. Masaaki grunted and stretched his arms limberly over his head, yawning as he flexed his spine with the ease of a dancer. Bonnie noticed, despite herself, that he looked even better in the kindogi now that he'd spent a few days breaking it in, so it no longer had the stiffness and wrinkles like it had just come out of a manufacturer's shrink wrap. She saw the way the heavy cloth clung to his body in all the right places, and cleared her throat, quickly finding something else to look at. She locked the doors on the Mercedes. Masaaki continued to stretch, groaning.
I think Master Shinzato damaged my liver with that last sword strike. I can feel the blood pooling inside, under my lungs.
Oh, great. Just what she needed to hear. Bonnie had gotten used to the crazy, random-ass stuff that the immortal said as an "oh, by the way," and had long since stopped feeling sorry for his bouts of internal bleeding. Shinzato Yusuke had, after all, offered him armor. Repeatedly. "Food," Bonnie said, heading toward the front door. Masaaki cut his stretch short with a startled sound and hurried after her. Inside Fred Meyer, Bonnie grabbed Masaaki by the belt and yanked him through the automatic doors before he could start another 30-minute search for elves. While he was twisting around, looking behind them, she tugged a cart out of the foyer and shoved the samurai and cart through the second set of automatic doors and into the main store. She took him to the multivitamins first. As soon as they were in the aisle, Masaaki whipped out his handy-dandy little pocket dictionary and frowned up at the heading over the shelf.
That says women's vitamins.
Masaaki informed her. Bonnie narrowed her eyes. Women's vitamins have more iron in them. Iron is important if you lose blood. You'll go anemic if you don't have iron.
It says they're for women.
He wandered over to the men's section.
Here, these are for men.
He pointed to the non-iron-rich vitamins on the shelf above him. "Listen to me," Bonnie growled, not about to try to explain to a samurai the nutritional mechanics of menstrual cycles, because that for sure would keep him from touching the women's vitamins. "You need these." She threw a few bottles of the women's multivitamins into the cart. The samurai narrowed his eyes at the bottles, each showing a happy, healthy woman on them, then looked up at her.
What are you trying to say, Wonko?
"You're losing blood. You need these. Women lose a lot of blood. These are better for rebuilding blood." For a moment, Masaaki just gave the pills a blank stare. Then his eyes widened and he took a step backwards. He looked up at the women's shelf with outright horror on his face. Bonnie slapped her face into her hand, knowing by then that the situation was beyond salvage. "Fine. You know what? Fine." She yanked the bottles out of the cart, stacked them back on the shelf, took several men's vitamins from the shelf, and then followed those up with some iron supplements. She then steered him to the sports drinks section, where she loaded up the cart with a good 40 bottles of pretty-colored liquids for him to try. Then they headed over to the produce department, where she bought him plenty of fruits and veggies to complement the sushi rice she had bought at a specialty foods shop in Anchorage. Bonnie, whose food aficionado status before the samurai's appearance had been limited to the pursuit of microwavable cheeseburgers and frozen pizza, hadn't even realized there was a difference between regular rice and sushi rice, which, of course, had made Masaaki call her a barbarian. He liked, it seemed, to call people barbarians, when he was the one running around with swords and sticking them in people, the hypocrite.
Tea,
Masaaki said, once they'd filled the cart with enough fruits and veggies to make an elephant puke. He pulled out his pocket dictionary again. Bonnie rolled her eyes, but took him back to the tea aisle. "You're on your own this time, buddy." Then, as he started wandering around the shelves, puzzling through the titles, she said, "Okay, well, you look real good at the pictures. I'm gonna wander over to the coffee aisle and get myself some Java. I'm running low." She waved at the shelves upon shelves of tea. "Get whatever looks good. I'm thinking 10 boxes max, though. I'll be back in a minute, okay?" Masaaki grunted and started combing his fingers along the boxes, flipping through his annoying little book.
what is pomegranate?
"And stay there," Bonnie said, hesitating at the end of the aisle. Masaaki waved her off and kept searching. Sighing, Bonnie pulled her cart around the end of the aisle and went looking for coffee. Out of habit, she started looking at the brands that were on sale first. Then, halfway through picking out the cheapest, most generic brand she could find, realized that in the last week she had just dumped over $50,000 on a sword-swinging freak, was probably about to spend another $300 on food for his ungrateful ass, and just inherited millions. And she deserved Folgers, damn it. She had found her favorite canister tucked down on the bottom shelf and was standing back up from retrieving it when the air shimmered at the corner of her eye, and a man materialized at her back. An instant later, she felt 2 painfully sharp pricks against her spine.
Scream,
A deep male voice said against her ear.
and I carve out your heart right here, vampire.
Chapter 18. Car Chase. Masaaki had picked out a nice little stack of boxes and canisters that had obvious tea leaves on them, and then began to get impatient. Leaving his boxes piled on the floor, he walked around the corner where he had seen Bonnie disappear, then frowned at the abandoned cart.
Bonnie?
He called, ducking down a nearby aisle. Aside from a little Chinese woman counting eggs inside the carton, it was empty. He went back to his tea aisle, saw no one, then glanced behind him at the indecipherable racks of items under the humming white lights.
Bonnie?
He called again, walking partway down the coffee aisle. As he rounded their cart, he saw the single canister upside down on the floor. Masaaki stared at that a moment, then broke into a run. He jogged down the end of the aisle, looked around in the main thoroughfare, and was just in time to see Bonnie being shoved through the elf-powered double doors by a large, silver-skinned man before the doors closed behind them and they were lost to the dim light beyond.
Ancestors be merciful. It's the Lord.
Masaaki bolted for the exit, but they were some distance away, moving fast, and Bonnie and the man were already climbing into a huge, open-backed truck by the time he got through the doors to the courtyard beyond. He heard the huge, rumbling engine start. Heart hammering now, Masaaki unsheathed his sword and ran after them.
Bonnie!
The great truck backed toward him briefly, then twisted and started to turn away. Masaaki harnessed his hikari and pressed it into speed. He dashed after the rumbling vehicle and had just enough time to grab its open back with his fingers before it was flying through the courtyard, dragging him. Masaaki held on, knowing that to let go now would be to never see his daimyo again. The truck took a sudden left turn, almost hurling him off into the road, but then came to a sudden stop at the corner, next to the big red stop sign. Masaaki used the moment to climb quietly over the back of the truck and creep forward along the bed. The vampire lord was looking ahead of them, one hand gripping his daimyo by the wrist, the other hand on the steering wheel. He hadn't seen him yet. Masaaki slid forward as the car turned and started toward a big traffic light at the bottom of the hill. When it rolled to a stop at the base of the hill, he struck. Shoving his fist through the glass, Masaaki summoned his hikari and lit up the inside of the car in a wash of daylight, focused on his fist. The lord screamed and recoiled, releasing the steering wheel to protect his face.
Bonnie! Go!
Masaaki screamed. She tumbled out of the open door and fell to the ground on her back, staring up at Masaaki and the screaming lord in horror.
Run!
Masaaki shouted.
Back to the car, now!
He gave the vampire an extra long dose, ensuring he would not follow. Then jumped from the bed and, drawing his sword, moved to the door. No! Bonnie shouted. The infuriating woman had not run as instructed. Don't you dare, Masaaki!
This is twice now. He's going to die.
He yanked the driver's door open, revealing the whimpering vampire on the other side. He lifted his sword to strike. That is an order, Masaaki! God damn it, you can't! He could. Easily. And as the vampire looked up at him in wretched, shuddering misery, huddled against the floorboards of his massive car, Masaaki realized they both knew it. Seeing the monster's pale, silvery skin, the demonic pupils dilated all around. Masaaki raised his sword again. As your daimyo, I am telling you, no! She snapped. Masaaki snarled and lowered his sword. For a long moment, he and the vampire lord locked gazes, and in the welling of old loathing and horror that followed, Masaaki almost killed him anyway. Then, focusing his hikari on his hand again, making the vampire hiss and cringe away from him, he leaned into the cab and growled,
You've been spared once. It won't happen again.
Then, with one last look at the sobbing wreck on the floorboards of the truck, Masaaki sheathed his sword and stalked after his daimyo. Theo somehow managed to climb back behind the wheel and pull the doors shut and drive himself back to his hotel, though his entire body was trembling from head to toe, feeling awash in putrid liquid fire. He weakly tugged the keys from the ignition and got out, but couldn't get his feet under him, and he rolled out onto the concrete.
You okay, buddy?
A tourist in the hotel parking lot asked, pausing and unpacking luggage from a shiny new rental car.
Fine.
Theo rasped, crawling to his feet and slamming the truck door behind him, denting the frame. Seeing that, the man's eyes went wide, and he put his dinky rental car between himself and Theo. Theo stumbled past him and into the hotel lobby. Then, ignoring the clerk's questions at the front desk, he made his way to the staircase and climbed to his third-story room. His hand was shaking so badly that it took him a good 2 minutes to force the keycard into the door, and by the time he pushed it open, Theo was close to simply ripping the entire thing off its hinges and throwing it down the stairs.
Calm down.
He told himself as he stepped inside and shut the door behind him.
You'll already be lucky if they don't call the cops.
And police, in his current state, were not something he would be able to deal with. He'd simply feed from them to cleanse the filth from his system, then move to Tibet. A Yatagarasu. In 800 years, he'd never been attacked by a Yatagarasu. He'd seen them twice in 2 different dungeons while out visiting fellow refugees from the Third Lands, but never free. Never with their magics unfettered.
Christ!
Theo moaned, slumping to the bed.
Oh, fuck. That sucked.
That was 2 for 2, and both times Theo had gotten his ass handed to him. She had enthralled a Yatagarasu, and the Yatagarasu had fully intended to kill him. He'd seen it in the man's eyes. And she'd stopped him, because she wanted a lord as a thrall. But she wasn't going to take him in public. Too dangerous. Hell, she'd probably followed him here.
Fuck!
Theo groaned, tilting his head to look at the window. Whichever way she decided to enter, as nauseated and disoriented as he wasn't going to be able to do jack shit about it. He'd even forgotten to put up wards as he stepped into the room. Not like he had the ability to even feel the magic right now.
God!
He whimpered, curling into a ball on the bed, boots and all.
Fuck me. Fuck me!
A few minutes later, he was dry heaving over the edge of his bed, onto the floor, having already retched up the meager remnants of his roast beef sandwich he'd purchased at the nearby gas station. Whimpering, he panted and tried to get his bearings as the world increasingly began to twist around him. He was grabbing the bed with both hands now, just to assure himself that he wasn't being thrown off by the way the world seemed to be spinning without him. Then he heard movement in the hall outside his door, and he froze. Footsteps, stopping outside his room.
Mr. Strongwell?
Theo recognized the voice of the hotel clerk.
Do not disturb!
Theo shouted, dropping his head back to the bed in relief.
Sir, I've got some folks here who say that you were just attacked by a guy with a sword. You injured, sir?
Fuck off!
Theo shouted.
No, I'm not injured.
Sir, you were stumbling. Can you please open the door? If you won't open the door, I'm going to have to call the police.
Cursing, Theo rolled off the bed and crawled to the door.
God damn it, I'm coming. Let me get dressed.
Theo crawled up the frame, held himself steady a moment, took several deep breaths, and opened the door. The vampire queen, the Yatagarasu, and the hotel clerk awaited him on the other side. The Yatagarasu was in jeans and a t-shirt, arms crossed over his chest, giving him a flat look. Theo could see the tip of the longer sword poking out under his unzipped long jacket.
He looks okay.
The clerk said, inspecting him.
I don't see any blood.
Me neither, the queen said, peering up at Theo's face with a flat expression. Apparently he didn't get stabbed.
Sorry to bother you, sir.
The hotel clerk said hurriedly.
Come on, folks. Let's let Mr. Strongwell get his rest.
Actually, I think I might have witnessed an assault, the vampire queen said pointedly. So I think I should probably get Mr. Strongwell's side of the story before I decide I need to go talk to the police anyway. The hotel clerk hesitated.
They can stay.
Theo rasped, not wanting to involve a human in the bloodbath he knew was about to follow. And for the first time in 8 centuries, he wasn't exactly sure whose blood would be bathing whom. He could barely stand up straight, and he was trembling from head to toe. He stepped deeper into his room.
Come in. I'll do what I can to alleviate your fears.
Yeah, we should probably just talk to him a minute. Make sure we didn't actually see what we thought we saw, the queen replied. You go on. I'll come get you if I need to make that call, okay? The clerk licked his lips, gave Theo a nervous look, then said,
You sure, Mr. Strongwell? It was kind of against policy to come get you, but there was a hole in your back window, and the way you'd been walking... Damn it, just go!
Theo snapped.
I'll take care of this. They obviously saw it wrong.
He backed into his room and waited for his guests to step inside. The Yatagarasu followed first, then the queen. She softly shut the door behind her. So, the queen said, in the long silence that followed. What the fuck, dude? Theo was warily working his way back to the bed, the Yatagarasu keeping his body between the two of them, though he had thrown his jacket to the floor as soon as the door had shut.
What do you mean, what the fuck?
Theo growled.
You send your parents to capture you a lord, and you go enthrall a Yatagarasu, and you ask me what the fuck?
The queen glanced at the Yatagarasu with a frown. What the hell is he talking about?
I want to kill him,
The Yatagarasu said.
Let me kill him.
No, damn it! She growled. I want to know why he fucking attacked me. Twice!
He was going to take you to his lair and force you to produce him an army.
The Yatagarasu said, without taking his eyes from Theo.
I was going to kill her.
Theo said. From the sudden flash in the Yatagarasu's eyes, he knew it hadn't been the smartest thing he'd ever said. But at the moment, he didn't really care. He slumped to the mattress and just rolled over onto his side, feeling so sick that death, at that point, was a welcome change. Okay, the queen said, obviously not having expected that response. She licked her lips and looked nervously at the door. So, how many of you are there? And why do you want me dead? It was my parents, wasn't it? They hurt someone, didn't they?
I killed them both.
Theo said, squeezing his eyes shut and gripping the bed again to still the wretched world spinning. He figured if he stayed as unthreatening as possible, maybe the Yatagarasu wouldn't hit him with another blast of sunlight before he put one of those swords through his neck. There was a very long silence before the queen said in a soft voice, Seriously?
They fucking deserved it.
Theo growled.
And you'll get the same when you don't have your damned pet following you around.
I'm not enthralled.
The Yatagarasu said. Theo snorted.
Right.
I'm not.
Why would he be enthralled? The queen said. Theo lifted his head from the bed, just long enough to see the perfectly fake, puzzled look on the queen's face, then dropped his forehead back to the blankets.
Just have your pet kill me and get it over with. Right now. I'd rather be dead anyway.
The queen started moving towards him. But I don't understand.
Stay the fuck away from me!
Theo snarled, tumbling out of the bed and up against the far wall, facing her, his entire body trembling with the feel of the Yatagarasu's magic.
You try to take me, bitch, and I will rip off your fucking arms.
In that instant, the Yatagarasu flared again, this time his whole body, and Theo shrieked and curled into a ball against the wall, sobbing under the vile filth that inundated his being. Masaaki, stop it! The queen snapped. The Yatagarasu didn't obey, but actually stepped forward, bringing the eye-searing light closer, wrenching a helpless wail from Theo's chest. A few feet away, the man's voice growled.
This one needs to die, daimyo. He intended to kill you. He fed from me against my will.
Stop hurting him, Masaaki! Now! The light vanished, leaving sweet, blessed darkness. Theo realized his face was pressed to the hard hotel carpet, tears and saliva sticking to the floor under his sobs. Look, the queen said. I'm not like my parents, okay? Ask Masaaki!
He's enthralled!
Theo screamed.
Fucking kill me already!
He couldn't see, couldn't move, couldn't even hear worth a damn. He felt like his whole being had been dipped in tar.
I'm not enthralled.
The Atagarasu retorted.
But you may be, if you don't start treating her with respect.
Fuck you.
Theo said. But it came on a whimper of despair. He knew he couldn't stop them, if that's what they decided to do. With the Atagarasu pinning him down, she could sink her fangs into him, and there wouldn't be a damn thing Theo could do about it. Dude, the queen said. Why does he think you're enthralled?
You know how I sliced open your wrist and drank your venom?
The Atagarasu patiently explained to her.
If instead you had injected that same venom into my bloodstream before I'd had a chance to immunize myself, I would be, even now, unable to disobey you, daimyo.
Well, shit! I wish you would have told me that before I let you cut open my arm, you asshole. A lot of stuff would have gone a lot more smoothly.
And I wouldn't have been able to leave the tea aisle once you told me to stay.
The Atagarasu reported. Oh, she actually sounded embarrassed. Slowly, even through his dimmed senses, the truth of the situation was beginning to dawn on Theo. He had heard her tell the Atagarasu to stay in the tea aisle. It was why he had accosted her in the coffee aisle and taken her around behind 2 other aisles and out. He had assumed the Atagarasu couldn't follow. Very slowly, Theo opened his eyes and looked up at the Atagarasu, who was standing a good 4 feet out of reach, katana drawn. Then, shaking all over, utterly weak, he turned his head to look at the queen.
So,
The Atagarasu said to the queen,
I said I'd let you thrall a lord if we couldn't get anything else to help.
His gray-on-brown eyes were fixed on Theo.
This is a lord, and the Sanzu fled.
Theo's heart started to hammer violently, and he tried to crawl away.
Stay there and face your fate like a man, or I'll douse you with the light again, demon.
That was enough to make Theo stop crawling. He froze against the carpet, because to be inundated with the Atagarasu's light at that point was more horrifying than being taken as a thrall.
Please don't.
He whimpered.
I won't move. Please.
He was groveling like a coward, and he knew it, but he would do anything to keep the Atagarasu's light from touching him again. The Atagarasu grunted.
Go ahead and take him, Bonnie. He flinches, I'll blast the chicken shit into a coma.
Theo shuddered and closed his eyes in a wash of pure misery. A queen. He was going to be claimed by another queen. He had given up everything and fled to the third realm so that he could never again fall prey to the depravities of another queen. Theodore heard her approach and cringed into the carpet. Instantly, he felt a wash of shame. Theodore Osvalder Hjör, one of the most powerful barons of the Council of Lords, with a place of his own, an army under his command, and having the respect of the entire Third Lands at the mere whisper of his name. And here he was, squirming on the hard carpet of a second-rate hotel, trying to hold as still as possible while a queen thralled him so a Yatagarasu wouldn't hit him with his light again. But the queen stopped beside the Yatagarasu and said, "Why were you trying to kill me?" Theodore laughed bitterly and rolled his head into the carpet, away from them. The Yatagarasu sighed.
Just thrall him now and ask questions later. He'll answer your questions once you thrall him.
"Shut up, Masaaki!" A pause. "How bad did he hurt you? Can you even talk?" Then, to Theo's surprise, she came to squat beside him just out of reach so that she could see his face.
Just do it.
Theo whispered, twisting his face away from her.
I'll give you nothing willingly, monster.
Instead of laughing at him and telling him either way worked for her, the queen crept sideways until she was once more in his field of vision. "Just do what?" she asked Theo timidly.
Thrall him.
The Yatagarasu said. "I thought you said you didn't want me to thrall anyone, Masaaki," the queen growled. "You made me promise."
She promised not to thrall?
Theodore really met her eyes for the first time since their chance meeting at the gas station. Even through his misery, he was surprised at the nervousness he saw there. much of the same as the anxiety she had shown at the pump. Not at all the malicious, self-serving confidence he had always known of the queens. And back in his home realm, he had met dozens of queens.
Lords are different,
Masahaki said.
You can thrall as many of them as you want. The self-serving scum do it to others, as thoughtlessly as picking up a coin off the street.
I do not!
Theo snapped, his anger rising.
If that were true, Crow, I would have enthralled you instead of tied you with rope. Believe me, it made more sense to thrall you, asshole.
The Atagarasu's sword seemed to dip slightly. Then his shock faded with suspicion.
Of course not. You were saving your poison to thrall the queen.
You can't thrall a queen!
Theo snapped back, his cheek still pressed to the carpet.
Their magic is too strong.
Okay, the queen said. Everyone just shut up about thralling for a second. Nobody's thralling anybody. I don't even know what the hell you're talking about. All I really want to know is why you've been trying to kill me.
You're a queen.
Theo growled, meeting her amber gaze again.
I was going to kill you before you had a chance to pollute this realm and make more of your kind.
She pursed her lips in an O. Oh. She swallowed. Okay?
Just sink your fangs into him and flex the muscles in your wrists. If you don't yet have the control, then you can wrap one hand around your wrist and squeeze. Simple.
Masahaki! She snapped. I'm not going to thrall him. Stop being an ass. You told me it was a horrible thing to do to somebody. Hell, you made me promise not to. And just because this guy scared you, you don't need to be a dick. A lord is no different than Yatagarasu.
A vampire lord is entirely different, Bonnie. That is what they do. Their sole purpose in life is to enthrall an army and collect sustenance for queens.
I'm not doing it, okay? Just stop being a prick and let me talk to him. The Yatagarasu sighed deeply, but went quiet. Theo, who had been listening to the conversation with rising shock, watched as the queen bit her lip and turned back to him. She seemed to study him a moment, all nerves. Well... She cleared her throat, obviously, compiling her thoughts. Okay. See, Masahaki forced me to be a vampire. He wanted to teach me to be a good vampire, see? At least, I think that's what he was running through his screwed-up head. Anyway, my parents didn't even tell me I was a vampire until I got this note after they'd left. Something about them bringing back a consort. I don't really know. But they left Masahaki tied up in their attic when they left, and I freed him, and he made me drink his blood. He's got some weird honor code thing going on where he's been giving me his blood to keep me from having to drink from anyone else. But Masahaki can't keep up, and it's really wearing him down, and I was hoping maybe you'd let me drink your blood because we don't have anybody else, because the other Yatagarasu flew off when we freed her, and he's going to die if you don't? What the hell? Theo rewound the garbled mess in his head, piecing it back together in his mind. It sounded like the queen was... asking? Theo slowly twisted his body on the rug to face her, stunned. He saw hope mingled with anxiety in her eyes. Was she asking?
Careful, Lord.
The Yatagarasu warned at his movement, but Theo ignored him. He was so utterly bewildered by her apparent query that, for a long moment, he could only stare.
Are you...
he said softly.
asking me, little queen?
She blushed and looked down and started picking at the carpet. She glanced up at the Yatagarasu.
You don't have to ask him for shit. Just take him and be done with it. He's demonkin, born of the third realm. He doesn't deserve your compassion, daimyo. It's lost on him. Believe me.
The flatness in the Yatagarasu's eyes, combined with the hatred in the man's voice, left Theo feeling cold. He knew, right then, that if this queen weren't in the room with them, he would be dead. But the queen's face darkened, and she said, Masahaki, go stand out in the hall, okay? The Yatagarasu went completely stiff.
No.
God damn it, Masahaki, go! She cried. I need to talk to him alone, okay? You're making things worse.
No! Daimyo,
the Atagarasu repeated firmly.
If I leave you here with him, he will be a corpse when I do.
And Theo realized right then that the Atagarasu was undeniably not enslaved. And, in realizing that, Theo understood that there was nothing stopping the Atagarasu from putting his sword through his neck, should the man decide that the queen was taking too much time enthralling Theo. And he would, too. Theo sensed that if she took much longer, his life was forfeit. The queen, only a teenager it seemed, didn't seem to recognize that fact. She gave the Atagarasu a long, irritated look, then turned back to Theo in a huff. Immediately, she lost some of her confidence, and she sounded almost timid as she said, Look, I was hoping you could help us. I'm not going to thrall you.
You're going to thrall him or he's going to die!
Masaaki, goddammit! She shouted. You are not helping the situation!
I am going to end the situation, one way or another.
The queen went pale. You are not killing him!
Enthrall him or I kill him, one or the other. He's a lord, daimyo, which means he could enthrall me if I let him sink his fangs into me.
I did sink my fangs into you,
Theo said softly. Theo remembered the man screaming under him, thrashing in terror, and felt a wash of guilt.
I'm sorry, Masaaki.
The Atagarasu's face hardened, and he gave him a merciless stare.
One or the other, daimyo.
Look, just give me a few minutes, the queen snapped. Then to Theo. Okay, you said you were going to kill me because I was a queen? I mean, like, what if I had those little black things ripped out of my arms? Would everybody be happy then? Theo froze.
What?
Absolutely not.
Why not? The queen demanded. You don't want me to use them. I don't want to use them. Hell, you even said I should get them both removed when you first cut me open. So, if it would ease his mind, why not? Masaaki jabbed the sword at Theo.
I'd carve the poison sacs out of his arms, gladly. But yours, daimyo, will stay.
Why? She demanded.
For times like this, when you must choose whether to thrall a lord or let me kill him.
Trembling and sick, Theo said.
Kill me, Crow. I've been thralled before. I'd rather die than go back.
The Atagarasu cocked his head at Theo, and his eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly, but said nothing. Oh, this is just frickin' stupid! The queen suddenly got up and bared her wrist to Theo's lips. Go ahead! Theo glanced at the girl's wrist for a startled moment before his instincts kicked in. He rolled away from her as quickly as his sluggish body could move, in hopes that the first lander wouldn't hit him with another blast of sunlight. He was too late. He screamed and curled in on himself as the Atagarasu's light suddenly seared the entire room until it was too bright to see. Then the light dimmed just enough for Theo to see the Atagarasu stepping forward, sword held high. The queen ducked under the sword and dropped on top of him, putting her forehead to Theo's cheek. For a moment, Theo thought she was trying to feed, and he started to throw her off. Then he realized that both of her hands were planted over his face and arms, protecting as much of Theo's skin as she could. Instantly, the Atagarasu's light went dim.
Daimyo,
He said softly.
Get off of him. Right now.
There was fear in the man's suddenly pale face. Unmistakable fear. No! Goddammit! The queen retorted, lifting her head so that Theo could look up at her in bewilderment. She was not looking at him, however, and was peering up at the Atagarasu. Listen to me, both of you. Masaaki, it would not go well if you leave a decapitated corpse in this hotel room. They would take your swords and put you in jail. She turned to look down at Theo. Nameless vampire dude? I am not your regular vampire dudette. I'm not going to be thralling anyone, okay? But Masaaki is dying. And you can help us. You don't have to. Hell, at this point, all I really want to hear is that you're not going to try to kill me again. But you could help him.
Daimyo,
The Atagarasu said softly, eyes catching on Theo.
Get off of him. Please.
And Theo knew that the last word was meant for him. "Put your sword away, samurai," the queen retorted, oblivious. "He's not going to hurt me." Obviously, the queen had no idea that a lord was stronger and faster, or that every instinct in Theo's body was screaming at him to run his fangs through her neck and twist off her head. Slowly, Theo turned to look at the Yatagarasu, who was standing 2 steps away, utterly rigid, then returned his gaze to the queen, who was straddling him. He considered.
Don't.
The Yatagarasu whispered.
Back off,
Theo said, holding the queen's gaze. Above him, the queen frowned. But the Yatagarasu understood. Very slowly, he took a step backwards.
Further.
Theo growled.
Get out.
You're going to die, demon.
But the Yatagarasu backed to the other end of the room. He did not, of course, leave them alone together, but it was far enough for Theo's comfort. Then, very gently, Theo reached up and lifted the queen off of him. Whoa! She grunted as he set her aside, obviously surprised at his strength.
Little one,
Theo said.
One thing you will learn.
He glanced over at the Yatagarasu, who was still watching him from the far wall, utterly stiff.
A lord is dangerous.
She frowned down at him. So? Theo was shocked. Was she truly that innocent? He considered her, then glanced again at the Yatagarasu.
Give me your wrist again,
he said, watching the crow. The golden crow stiffened as the queen naively held out her arm.
Extend your fangs,
Theo said, eyes still on the Yatagarasu. She said, looking down at the pale flesh of her forearm. I can't. I'm sorry. Theo turned to her, surprised.
You're young.
I'm 19, she said, glaring, as if that made her ancient. Theo blinked at her.
How long have you been awakened?
She blushed. Oh, just a couple weeks ago, I guess. Masaaki made me do it.
Just weeks ago?
Theo's breath caught. Glancing again at the Yatagarasu, Theo reached a shaking hand to her forearm and started massaging the fangs from her wrist. Ow! She whimpered. Ow! 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 Against the wall, the Yatagarasu took a step forward.
Stay there or she loses the arm,
Theo said, without looking. He watched her tiny fangs emerge from the still forming scars of her wrist. Then, once they were visible, he brought the protrusions to his lips, wrapped a hand around the small bulge in her wrist, and squeezed. Ew! The queen said, as silver magic began to spill forth from the fangs into his mouth. Grimacing, she twisted her body away, but of course her arm was held immobile. Yuck! Yuck! Theo drank, and felt his entire world shift. Like liquid ambrosia, the queen's magic flowed through him, spreading outward in a tingling heat from his center, wiping out the pain of the Yatagarasu's light.
Oh,
He murmured, his heart beginning to pound like a jackhammer.
oh my.
You're dead, demon!
The Yatagarasu snapped, but Theo was staring at the queen's wrist in awe. Throughout his long life, as many countless years that he had spent in thrall, he'd never imagined that imbibing of a queen could feel so good. The blood magic was electrifying him, heating up his carnal senses, demanding that instinctive mating rite. He was actually having trouble breathing, holding it back. What was worse, he had to fight the insane instinct to press the fangs from her other wrist and drink of those too, while he used his other hand to tear off her clothes. Clearing his throat, finding it hard to focus at the sudden, wondrous buzz of the queen's magic, he bared his wrist, pushing forth his fangs, and said,
Drink of me.
"What?" the girl asked, rubbing her wrist where her own fangs had slipped back into their sheath.
Drink of me.
He growled, flexing his venom sac slightly, allowing a silver dribble at the tip of his fang into his palm.
Now, before I change my damned mind.
Against the wall, the Yatagarasu's sword dipped a bit, and he straightened. She glanced at the silver droplets, then sniffed and reached up to wipe her nose. Dude, that's really gross. Theo blinked at her complete dismissal of his gift, then narrowed his eyes. Grabbing her arm, he pulled her forward until his fangs were an inch from her nose, the puddle of silver in the palm of his hand directly under her lips.
Drink,
he growled. That's gross! The queen cried, scrabbling at his arm with her soft white fingers.
Drink it, daimyo,
the Yatagarasu said softly. Ew! No! The queen blurted. She tried inefficiently to push Theo off of her. Theo dragged her face to his until they were eye to eye, nose to nose.
Drink it.
She went pale. Then her eyes flickered nervously to his wrist and the luminescent silver that was even then flooding over the palm of his hand. Why?
He's offering to be your consort, girl. Drink it before the magic fades.
What the hell is a consort? She demanded. And what magic? Who cares if it fades?
I'll hold her mouth open.
The Yatagarasu sheathed his sword and started towards them. It was almost comical how quickly the girl ducked to sip the magic from Theo's palm at the Yatagarasu's threat. She drank until Theo ran out of venom. Then her eyes went wide, and she rocked backwards. Oh. Her mouth fell open, and she looked up at Theo in obvious wonder. Whoa. He saw her shiver as his deeper, more violet silver hit her lighter blue silver and mingled in her chest. Then he saw her pupils dilate, until her eyes showed nothing but black, and she was crawling over him, pulling at his shirt, his pants.
Whoa there, darling.
Theo quickly pinned her arms against her side, trapping her wrists, and held her that way, as she squirmed and gasped and tried to ride him through his clothes. For his own part, the urge was just as strong, but he'd had plenty of years to learn to control the sexual side of the blood magic. The girl, on the other hand, was completely lost to it. She was busy dry-humping his leg, to the obvious embarrassment of the Yatagarasu.
It'll pass in an hour or two,
Theo told the Yatagarasu, still holding her tight as she thrashed and moaned against him, fully enraptured by the heat of the magic.
Young vampires can't control it.
Young vampires, or those who never bothered to learn. Thankfully, he was pretty sure that, with this one at least, it was the former.
She's untouched,
the Yatagarasu said awkwardly. There was a pleading in the man's eyes.
If I have my way, she will remain that way,
Theo assured him. But the Yatagarasu cleared his throat, eyes caught on the way the vampire queen was rolling and undulating against Theo.
She needs someone to teach her. I can't do it.
Because she would kill him. Because she would kill anything other than a lord. Theo glanced at the girl twisting and moaning in his lap. Her face was flushed, her lips crimson. If he allowed it, he was sure she would try to thrust both sets of fangs into his chest. Even then, she was twisting her wrists, trying to escape him. Training a queen. Theo grimaced at the idea.
I can't say that's really on my list of priorities there, buddy.
Immediately, the Yatagarasu's face darkened.
That is part of being a consort.
Not necessarily.
Theo said.
Technically, a consort feeds a queen.
Well, I can't do it.
The Yatagarasu snapped.
And she's going to kill somebody. Look at her.
Theo glanced down at the writhing, whimpering form in his arms. She was 19, and he was 40 centuries. He didn't want to be responsible for that loss of innocence.
In the Third Lands,
he said softly.
She would be consorted with someone older, yes.
He said reluctantly.
But I'd rather not now, anyway. If I were going to teach her, she'd have to know what was going to happen from the beginning. She'd have to ask me.
He shook his head.
We'll just keep her away from boys until then.
That's irresponsible. And sooner or later, it's going to get me killed.
Still holding the writhing queen, Theo grinned up at the Yatagarasu.
The name's Theo. I'll be your bodyguard from now on.
The Yatagarasu gave him a flat, utterly straight-faced stare.
I am samurai. I don't need a bodyguard.
Theo raised his brow.
Then I should just let her go?
He started to release his prize. Immediately, the Atagarasu floundered away from him, eyes wide. Theo laughed and cinched down his grip again.
All right, samurai. What's your real name? Masaaki?
There was a long pause before Masaaki gave a reluctant grunt.
Sorry about hitting you over the head and pinning you at the house there, Masaaki.
Theo said, turning to look over his shoulder at the man.
I was afraid you'd kill me if I didn't.
Masaaki grunted again, watching the queen's contortions.
Sorry I scared you.
The Atagarasu's eyes flickered to him, then away again.
How long were you a slave?
Masaaki jerked and scowled at Theo.
How long were you enthralled?
Theo grimaced, feeling the anger in the man's gaze.
Too long.
He peered down at the queen in his arms.
You really think this one's different?
You're alive, aren't you?
Masaaki demanded, which Theo decided could be taken several different ways. The queen had spared him more than once, but Masaaki had also spared him after he'd offered consort.
Someone needs to teach her.
The Atagarasu insisted.
You're a lord. That's your job.
Theo said. He was still getting over the idea that he had just offered the little queen his venom instead of ripping off her head. He could teach her, but he was afraid it would bring back too many bad memories. He glanced down at the squirming female in his arms. His skin, already oversensitized from the blood magic, was starting to succumb to her body's contortions. He swallowed hard against the surge of passion that followed.
Let's just get her past the next couple of hours, then we'll all have a nice big sit-down chat, okay?
Chapter 19. The Grinding Habit. Bonnie's every inch felt like it was on fire. She felt everything. The touch of every fiber, every hair. The slightest brush of air against her skin. The difference in the heat of the body beneath her, and the buckle of his belt, the buttons of his shirt, the coolness entering her lungs as she breathed. All of it was magnified. All of it was better. She gasped and twisted, reveling in the exquisite sensations against her skin. She needed more. She needed something. Everything. She tried again to bare his skin so that their bodies could join in the ecstasy together, flesh to flesh. She wanted to feel that warmth, wanted to sink her fangs into it, draw it into herself. Bonnie groaned again, unable to understand why he wouldn't let her move. Please! She tried again to twist her wrists free, but the arms continued to hold them to her side. Whimpering in frustration, she flexed and resumed rubbing, panting as she felt those excruciating tingles that were tracing through her veins, electrifying her blood, singing in her mind.
I think she's coming out of it.
A strange man's voice said, just above her head.
She better be.
Masaaki growled.
It's been 4 hours.
Coming out of it? Bonnie worked her legs against his, undulating her spine, enjoying the heat beneath her, the delicious hardness holding her in place, the delicate ridges and valleys of flesh tantalizingly close, the nice hard lump just under her abdomen, the way her nipples brushed against the cloth.
Yeah, well, once she does finally snap out of it, if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna need to go spend a few minutes alone. She's had me hard as a fucking rock since she started, and I'm developing a really bad case of blue balls.
Blue balls?
I will take the daimyo off your hands when the time comes. Your restraint was commendable, demonkin.
No shit. When she started grinding.
The voice above her head turned to face her and became more gentle.
You waking up there, Stardust?
Stardust? She hated Stardust. Only her dad called her Stardust. Who the hell did he think he was, calling her Stardust? And who the hell did he think she was, that she'd let some stranger call her Stardust? Some blonde bimbo who humped everything that moved? Then, grinding? All of a sudden, Bonnie realized that she was humping a stranger's leg, flexing and undulating against his stomach like a stripper on a pole. "Ah, Odin's balls!" she screamed, trying to wrench herself away from him. His arms held her like iron bands, giving her absolutely no movement. He was strong. Way, way too strong. Like vampire strong.
Yep, she's back.
The stranger's face was suddenly peering down at her, his pale green eyes focusing on her.
Feeling better?
Let go of me! Bonnie cried, struggling. Masaaki, help!
Hold on to her for another couple minutes.
The Atagarasu said.
Make sure.
Bonnie froze, turning to scowl at the samurai. He was reclining on the bed, a martial arts manual in one hand, a dictionary in the other. He had a pillow tucked under his head and back, and looked entirely comfortable. He hadn't even glanced up. Masaaki! What the hell? Bonnie cried. She squirmed, trying to avoid the way her body was touching with the strange man's. A vampire lord? She remembered him pricking her with his fangs in the store, then Masaaki trying to kill him. From that starting point, she fast-forwarded until she remembered sipping that silver liquid from his palm.
That was some rush, wasn't it?
The vampire lord said, grinning. He gave her a knowing wink. Blushing until her face was on fire, Bonnie swallowed and did her best to pretend she wasn't lying there atop a strange man after having dry-humped him until the skin of her thighs was raw. I have no idea what you're talking about. He rolled his pale green eyes.
Okay, right.
He released her and sat up as Bonnie scrambled away from him.
Now, if you folks will excuse me, I have to go take care of some stuff.
He got up and strode to the hotel bathroom and thumped the door shut. Eyes on the door where the stranger had disappeared, Bonnie hurried over to get behind Masaaki, who turned to look up at her from his studies with a single raised brow.
Fearing more yourself, daimyo?
Lowering her voice to a whisper, still watching the bathroom door, Bonnie said, What the hell did you let him do to me, Masaaki?
He's your consort. He'll feed you now.
Bonnie said, remembering the way the big guy's arms had clamped down and held her still like she were a skein of yarn. I'm not so sure about that. Masaaki, at least, didn't feel like he could rip her head off if he got displeased with the whole situation. He's strong, Masaaki. Masaaki swiveled to glare up at her.
As are you.
Bonnie froze. Of course. She was the scary, uncontrolled vampire. They'd found an alternative. Now Masaaki didn't feel obligated to let her attack him anymore, and she would never be able to walk in the sun again. Oh, she said, trying not to let him see how dejected she felt. So, he'll be enough for me then.
He better be. Lords are very special in the Third Realm. They're very good at feeding. It's what they're designed to do. Very fast, very clean, very controlled. A lord's venom eases the siphoning of the energy from a victim, and each successive feeding makes it quicker and easier, with less waste and less trauma on the donor. And, if he's consorted a queen, he can act as an almost unlimited storage reservoir and pass the energy along to her, as she needs it, and with no waste. The problem will be acquiring him volunteers.
You, Bonnie said. Though he didn't try to sit up from his reclined position, Masaaki's fingers hesitated on his book. You'll drink his venom first, though, right? Masaaki continued to look down at the book.
If he immunizes me, it will reduce the effect.
Oh, bullshit! Bonnie cried. You're gonna let him enthrall you?
It's different than with a queen.
How? Bonnie demanded.
The venom of a lord will enthrall in such a way that the enthralled desire to stay nearby and give him blood, because it produces a sort of ecstasy in them. A really good trip, kind of like what you just experienced. His venom helps them to produce more of their life force at faster speed, like fertilizing a plant with a dead fish. It's a very good symbiosis.
Sounds good so far, Bonnie said reluctantly. But I'm sensing a very big but. Masaaki shrugged.
Once poisoned, those he enthralls have to stay close to him because they can't live long without his drinking of them. I mean, they can live, but for a few weeks after they stop feeding him, they're going to go into a state of mindlessness and be pretty much non-responsive to the world. And the Lord pretty much has to die before they'll face that kind of agony willingly. Even those who hate having him eat from them will return of their own power, so that he can sink his fangs into them again.
Like a drug addict going through withdrawal. He gave a brief nod.
With a queen, the poison has a different effect. It's more of a surrender of the will, a need to obey, a compulsion. Your life is no longer your own.
The green-eyed stranger stepped from the bathroom, wiping his face and hair down with a towel. Giving her a shy grin, he added,
It was actually originally a defense mechanism against bigger, badder stuff like bunyips and barghests.
Then he snorted.
But of course, you can imagine how long that lasted.
Bonnie eyed him suspiciously, inching to the side to keep Masaaki between them. As he stood there, drying his shaggy brown hair, she got her first good look of the man who tried twice to kill her. He was silver-skinned, like her, with almost an inner glow to it. He was about 6 feet tall, same as her father, wore jeans and a t-shirt, and while muscled, did not have the bulk she would have expected to be able to hold her down like that. His eyes were a pale green, though they had that bigger-than-average look to them that had made Bonnie feel so awkward in school. Originally? The vampire lord tossed the towel back into the bathroom and took a deep breath, letting it out while fixing his gaze on her in consideration.
Your parents never taught you the history, did they?
No.
Masaaki said. The vampire lord leaned against the wall and watched her over Masaaki's head.
Many human winters ago, in the First Realm, your home realm, little one, the Furies got into a war with themselves. All the Guardians, the Furies, the Typhons, the Dragons, got drawn into the battle. And they were killing everything. A bunch of magi got together and fled the war in the First Realm, making the dubious choice of taking refuge in the Third Realm while they waited out the fighting. Right off, they realized that they needed to make some changes to themselves in order to survive. The Barghests and Bunyips could see in the dark, were unspeakably strong in comparison, and the humans' blood lit up like torches in the night. Many magi were lost before they captured a Barghest and used its blood to augment themselves. They took its vision and its strength for their own, working its powers into their bodies.
The vampire lord grinned.
Barghests and Bunyips were still stronger, though. Much stronger. Magi continued to be eaten. The Jotnar refused to lend assistance to things that could not save themselves, and it looked like all the refugees were going to die.
Gesturing at the room, the vampire said,
So, our intrepid ancestors, the smart devils that they were, used their newfound strength to raid a seductor lair. In case you don't know, they're a type of blood magus. Rather nasty, but also somewhat stupid because there's so many of them. And all one of the soldiers has to do is sink its fangs into its victim once, and they will always come back for more. There are males and females. Males feed the females from creatures they have thralled. Females control armies of drones. With me so far?
Bonnie nodded.
Okay.
The vampire lord pushed the fangs through his wrist and showed her the glowing silver etched into the ivory.
They wanted a seductor because it gave them the ability to fully embrace the blood magics which rule the Third Lands. They originally took only the female seductor's venom as a defense mechanism when attacked by Bunyip or Barghest Bunyip attacks. Stab the Bunyip, have a nice new Bunyip pet to protect you. But in the Magi's kids, the magics kind of changed. It no longer became an idle decision of whether or not to harness energy to work blood magic. The kids needed to feed. They needed to feed or they would die. And the boys lost the ability to defend themselves against Bunyip. Instead, they picked up the odd knack to make other creatures come slinking back to them time and time again to harvest their blood.
Then the vampire lord grinned at her.
Oh, and the Magi's children discovered that once they awakened those latent magics, they often experienced a seductor's insane urge to procreate when stimulated.
Bonnie blushed crimson. She cleared her throat and looked at her hands. So embarrassed she wanted to sink into the floor, she said, "Sorry." He waved her off.
You can't help it.
Yet.
Masaaki said.
Yet.
The Lord agreed. At Bonnie's frown, he said,
You're working off of a seductor's urges, girl. It's deep, but it's not you. Vampires are kind of mongrels, but your base is human.
I never liked history, Bonnie muttered. She had never considered herself anything other than human.
See, in the third realm, the seductor is a lot like a first-lander wasp. When it's time to reproduce, the female basically starts a big orgy in the nest. Then she uses her fangs to deposit eggs into her living victims in her frenzy, most of whom are male drones of its own species. And the males love it. To the death.
He winked at her. Bonnie said. So she kills them? Like a black widow? The vampire laughed.
Oh yeah. Nothing but husks once the eggs hatch. The larvae develop inside, eating away until they kill the host, but don't worry about that. The poison sacs bred true, but not the egg pods.
Bonnie swallowed hard and looked away.
So, yeah.
The vampire lord gestured dismissively.
By the time the Guardian Wars in the First Realm were over, the Magi had taken too much of the Third Lands into themselves and could not leave. So, our ancestors did what they could to fit in. We've been toe-to-toe with the Jotnar ever since. They don't really like us much, still consider us the outsiders, even though we've been there for hundreds of thousands of years now.
He grinned, and he had, Bonnie noticed, longer canines like her.
Okay. History lesson over.
Masaaki, I think we should go.
Soon, daimyo. I'll need to speak with the Lord in private for a few minutes. Then we can go. We need to set up another meeting with the slavers. Take the Lord back with us to get the Fey twins. Hopefully, we can convince them to go along with it.
Masaaki? Bonnie asked softly, still keeping his body between herself and the stranger. I meant we should leave him here and go. You don't want to be enthralled, right? We can find another way.
This is the best way, daimyo.
Why? Bonnie demanded. Sounds to me like he's gonna drug you.
And he'll love every minute of it.
The vampire lord grinned wider and stepped away from the bathroom wall. Masaaki remained lounging on the bed, not even trying to block the lord's access to her.
I'm Theo.
He held out his hand to her. Bonnie located the 2 circular scars in his wrist and bit her lip. Bonnie.
All right, Bonnie.
He took her hand and shook it.
From what Masaaki told me while you were, busy, he's really in a bad way. We already talked about it. I'm going to zap him tonight. Not drink, just give him a dose. Help him rebuild his immune system, if you know what I mean. He's running on empty.
I was getting him vitamins, Bonnie said, feeling both irritated and guilty. You kidnapped me before I could buy them.
Yeah, don't worry about that.
Theo said.
I'll give him a shot of go juice and he'll pep right up.
Bonnie said, glancing at Masaaki, who seemed overly emotionless about the whole affair. You sure you're okay with that, Masaaki?
Working with a lord, I can produce twice as much for you.
I wasn't asking that, Bonnie growled. I was asking if you were okay with it.
I swore an oath to feed you.
Oh, for Christ's sakes. She turned on the vampire lord. Theo, come here a sec. She grabbed the vampire by the wrist and tugged him toward the door. Then, even as Masaaki was frowning and starting to sit up off the bed, she stepped outside, pulled the vampire with her, and yanked the door most of the way shut. As soon as they were alone, she whispered up to Theo, Listen to me. Masaaki has a stick up his ass about some stuff. Hell, a lot of stuff. But he's got it in his head he's got to do this for me for honor or something stupid like that. And he doesn't see reason. He's really terrified as shit of vampires. And he doesn't want to do anything of the sort. So yeah, let's just call the whole thing off, okay?
I know he's afraid.
Theo said softly.
You forget, little queen, I already drank from him once. I saw his terror.
Bonnie blinked up at him, stunned. Then why would you thrall him?
Well, for one, we both figured it would be the only way he'd be able to survive the next couple days. He's dying, Bonnie.
Bonnie froze. is?
You notice how he didn't get off the bed? How he was leaning like that? He can barely move. Took everything he had to run down the truck and flash me.
Bonnie swallowed. Okay,
And for two,
Theo said.
I can repair the damage your parents did.
She stared. You can? How? Theo glanced at the door.
Okay, look. I don't do this kind of thing often, because it takes a really special case, but I've done it a couple times. Basically, I rescue someone from a vampire den, and they're totally terrified of vampires, which means they're terrified of me, even though I just rescued their ass. I'm kind of a point A to point B sort of guy, so if some damsel in distress is still kicking and biting me after a couple days, and I really need her to cooperate, I'll give her some go juice and teach her, hey, maybe this vampire ain't so bad after all. Then, when it's time to part ways, I'll leave her with someone I trust while the go juice runs out. It's a little on the shady side, but I think in your samurai's case, it might help.
A little on the shady side? Bonnie demanded. The vampire narrowed his eyes at her.
I don't do it very often, like I said. It's for special cases. Consider it an anti-vampire phobia drug. And if you want my opinion, Masaaki could really use it considering how much you scare the poor bastard. And how dead set he is on helping you.
Bonnie frowned. I don't scare him. Theo laughed.
Oh yeah, you do. He's just really good at hiding it.
From inside the room, Masaaki worriedly called.
Bonnie?
It didn't even sound as if he'd gotten off the bed.
So,
Theo said.
any other objections?
He glanced at her hand, which was still on the knob of the door. Bonnie considered for a long moment, then said, Masaaki is my friend. He's basically been asleep for 700 years. He doesn't know a lot of things. Someone can take advantage of that real easy. If you do that and hurt him, I'll kill you slowly. The vampire's eyebrows both went up.
I'll take that into consideration.
I also know he's a prize, Bonnie said. You take him, I'll find you.
Duly noted.
The vampire replied. He wasn't smiling. In fact, he looked dead serious. Good. Just want to be clear, Bonnie said. You hurt him, you're dead. I'll find a way.
Dearest,
The vampire said.
we're clear as crystal.
He gently laid a hand on her arm and gave her a reassuring squeeze.
Now, will you allow me to go help your friend before he puts himself into a coma trying to get off the bed?
Indeed, there were some strange grunts and thumps emanating from inside the room. Sure, Bonnie said, releasing the door. The vampire stepped past her and back into the hotel room. When Bonnie followed him into the room, the samurai was using his sheathed sword to prop himself up in a kneeling position on the floor, pale and shaking, looking for all the world like a living corpse. Odin's eye, Masaaki! Bonnie cried, rushing to fall beside him. What's wrong? Masaaki waved her off unconcernedly, and she watched a calm, collected facade slip back into place over the deathbed anxiety. He grunted and hung his head. The vampire's right, Bonnie thought, disturbed. Masaaki's been hiding it from me. The bastard. He was honest to God just going to let her drink him to death.
Okay, Stardust?
Theo said.
He's really close. This is about to get really ugly. And personal. Can you please step outside for a few minutes while I save your friend's life?
No way, Bonnie said. The vampire looked up at her, frowning. At the same time, Masaaki hoarsely whispered,
Get out, Wanko.
Bonnie opened her mouth to tell them both to shove it, then remembered what Theo's venom had done to her, and the hours of contortions that had followed. She froze. They couldn't possibly mean. Their utterly humorless faces told her that they could. Oh. Masaaki lost his grip on the sword and tumbled forward.
Now would be a good time!
Theo snapped at her, catching the samurai by the shoulder and helping him lay back. Bonnie backed out of the room and tugged the door shut behind her, locking it. As soon as the door was shut, she started to pace. She could hear whispers on the other side, but they were keeping their voices too low. Then, suddenly, Masaaki started to scream. Bonnie heard weak struggles, little thumps on the floor, frantic panting, and then silence. Then, crying. Bonnie knocked at the door.
Stay out there!
Theo snapped. Masaaki kept crying. It grew deeper and more wretched, and Bonnie found she couldn't stand it. "What's happening?" she cried.
Please go.
Masaaki sobbed. Hearing the desperation in the samurai's voice, Bonnie went. Chapter 20. Masaaki's Sacrifice. Masaaki lost hold of his katana and shamefully slumped against the floor, unable to hold himself up any longer.
Now would be a good time!
Theo shouted at his daimyo, which made Bonnie quickly back out of the room and shut the door behind her. Thank the ancestors. At least she wouldn't be there to witness his disgrace.
Okay, my stabby friend.
The vampire lord said, gently helping him lie back.
Let's have a quick chat, buddy. I want to make sure you really want to do this.
Keep your voice low.
Masaaki snapped. The last thing he wanted was for his daimyo to hear his shame.
Do you really want to do this?
The vampire whispered, complying. He touched his shoulder.
I can tell you've had experience.
Masaaki turned his head away in revulsion at the compassion in the vampire's light green eyes, refusing to cringe as the monster touched him.
Of course I do.
Yeah, that's not very convincing there, bud.
The vampire lifted his hand away and sat back, considering him.
Look, we both agree you're gonna die if you don't get some go juice ASAP, right?
Masaaki grimaced, but forced himself to nod. Even then, he could feel the flames of his life sputtering out, unable to replenish what had been taken. The venom of the Lord could cure that, temporarily giving him the boost he would need to survive and remain at Bonnie's side, as was his duty as a samurai. The cost, of course, would be his dignity.
Anything to repay her for giving me my honor back.
To his shame, it was as if the vampire could read his mind by watching the thoughts play across his face.
I take it you've got some samurai warrior honor thing about saving that teenager out in the hall. Yeah?
My daimyo.
The vampire sucked in a breath.
I thought I heard you say that before. That's definitely a new one.
The vampire cocked his head at Masaaki as if studying a curious insect.
Aren't daimyos supposed to be men, not teenage girls?
Masaaki tightened his fingers into fists, the nails cutting into his palms.
I owe her my freedom. I will repay her by ensuring she doesn't lose hers.
The decision had been made. Now, all he had to do was live by it, even if that meant enslaving his body to someone who could help her.
Ancestors help me. Let this be the right decision.
Masaaki thought. He knew that there was nothing that would keep the Lord from breaking his oath and using a Yatagarasu and a queen to forge an army and take over the First Realm, if that was his goal.
I have to trust him. Either way, I have to trust his word. At least if I live, I can try to stop him if he changes his mind.
Then, the logical part of him laughed.
Stop him? You will be fighting the urge to fuck him, you naive goatherd. You are not samurai. This will only bring you more shame.
Which was true. He once again thought of the Jumanji Giri, though he knew he had no way to make the cut at the moment. Such was his weakness. The vampire lord studied him, his pale green eyes sober. After what seemed like millennia of him studying him, Theo said,
I know what you're going through.
Masaaki gave a bitter laugh and rolled away.
Don't patronize me, vampire. Just do it.
I'm not patronizing you,
Theo said, gently pulling him back with a touch that made his entire body tense.
I spent most of my adult life enthralled to a queen in the Third Lands, enslaved by the Norddansliker.
Masaaki froze, knowing that of all the ways to lose one's self-determination, in all the bindings, spells, magics, and compulsions in all the realms, the Norddansliker of a queen was the worst. Even worse than the resolve-sapping Nachtlasmaur of a lord. Unlike the inhibition-easing venom of a lord, the Norddansliker left the victim with no will of their own, should the queen not want them to have it. He took another look at the vampire's face, struggling to balance what he saw there with what he felt.
You were born in the Third Lands?
He managed. The vampire had seemed so acclimatized to modern life that he'd simply assumed he had been born here. Theo made a bitter sound.
Yeah. Got bound by my schoolyard crush. She was 14, I was 15. We got a little frisky when my dad left us alone in the east wing of Hjort Castle, my ancestral family home. She was the daughter of a visiting queen from a barony to the east, looking for potential consorts. My dad wasn't bound to a queen, long story, but he married a weaver who worked for Freya. I remember the Valkyries coming for her in the morning and dropping her off at night.
Masaaki squinted at the man.
This queen didn't respect your father's obligations?
The vampire snorted.
Hell no. He was a well-known magus and she wanted him. Didn't get him, but her daughter got me instead. My father told me queens were dangerous and wanted me to stay away from her while they visited. Told me to stay in my room, but we slipped off and fooled around. She told me she wanted to show me her fangs, and my father had banned me from looking at fangs, so of course, that's what I did. Looking back, I think her mom might have set us up.
Masaaki grimaced, imagining being bound to a vampire so young.
You were children.
His pale green eyes were totally humorless.
And it was just as bad as you can imagine, being bound to a child. Especially one who'd been raised with the knowledge she could do anything she wanted in life if she had a big enough harem. I became a toy to her, no longer an equal, just something she had conquered. So she moved on to do the same to others. One after another, she would trick them into letting her enthrall them. She became one of the most powerful queens in the Nightlands. Lived much too long. Killed way too many. Made me...
Theo shuddered, then visibly shook himself. Masaaki flinched.
Bonnie isn't...
I know Bonnie isn't like that.
The vampire lord said gently.
Any fool can see she's innocent. Why else do you think I consorted her? We're on the same page with that, buddy. No worries for you there.
Masaaki gave a shuddering breath of relief, knowing the vampire wouldn't take advantage of his daimyo.
Thank you.
The vampire lord looked him over for a moment, then said,
What does worry me is I can see your blood web, and your life energy is flickering out as we talk. We should probably get this over with before you croak.
Masaaki, who had actually started to relax, tensed immediately. Theo watched the man tense and almost stopped it right there. He saw the pain, saw the humiliation, saw the fear directed at him, and felt the same self-loathing that he'd felt 10,000 times before in another lifetime.
No, you have to do this.
He told himself, looking at the flickering of Masaaki's life force. Just the act of breathing and staying conscious was taking what was left of the samurai's soul energy. The fool had allowed the queen to drain him to the point of death, and then he had tried to kill him and blasted light like the sun a few times. But he also knew that not all the paleness or shivering was the fact the samurai was near death. He was clearly terrified. Seeing him cringe at his touch made Theo physically ill.
You ever been taken by a lord's venom?
Theo asked softly. He hoped he had. He didn't want to be the first. Instead of answering him, Masaaki looked away, beginning to shiver all over again. Then, slowly, he shook his head. Agony raked at Theo's soul.
Fuck.
He sighed and ran his hand through his still wet hair.
Look, I'm not gonna lie. You're not gonna like it.
I know.
Masaaki whispered.
Just do it.
Seeing the terror in the man's body, Theo wanted nothing more than to just walk away, or give him a hug, but not jab him. But he had to. Even then, the life force was slipping away, the flickering gold reserves not enough to sustain Masaaki's breathing. Such had been the extent of the queen's last drain.
Okay.
Theo said gently.
I'm gonna talk to you as I do it. Distract you. Okay?
The warrior tightened his fist against the floor, but nodded.
I'm gonna do this real slow, okay?
Theo offered gently.
I'm not going to drink from you, and I'm not going to hurt you. You tell me at any time to stop, and I'll pull my fangs out and back off.
Just get it over with.
Masaaki said, humiliation and shame written across his tense Japanese face.
If it will help Bonnie, it's what I deserve.
It's what I deserve. The words came as a blow, and Theo felt that wash of self-loathing all over again. Unbidden, he remembered all the times he had hurt those who were helpless to him, how he had tortured countless people even as his mind screamed to stop, how they had begged him for mercy, and instead of granting it, his queen had made him brutalize them further. He put his hand on Masaaki's shoulder in compassion, then tried not to be repulsed by his own existence when the gesture made the Yatagarasu tense and cringe.
You didn't deserve what happened to you,
Theo said, keeping his hand in place.
And frankly, you and I are going to have a very long discussion about what you deserve once this is over and I've saved your life and you're a badass with swords again.
Now that Theo was touching him, the Yatagarasu panted, his brown eyes wider than they should have been. He was staring at Theo's hand, clearly not thinking about much more than the fact that the vampire was pinning him down. Just like so many others in his place. Theo had to swallow back bile and look aside to regain his composure, so strong was the self-loathing.
I'm not like the ones who had you before,
Theo said gently.
I came to the First Realm so I would never have to thrall anyone ever again.
Please.
Masaaki whispered. The same man who had twice almost gutted him and only hours before had him begging for mercy on the floor was now shuddering in terror and shame.
Just do it.
Seeing the man struggle, Theo wanted to be anywhere but hovering over him like a predator.
It's only temporary.
Theo swore.
I promise you, on my honor as a Hjor. 1 dose, we get you all fixed up, and then it's cold turkey until you're back to normal.
Masaaki scoffed, clearly not believing that.
Masaaki,
Theo said firmly.
I swear to you, I know exactly what you're offering me, exactly how tempting that would be, and I'm telling you, I'm not going to take advantage of it. I'd rather cut off my own balls with a chainsaw and hand them to you in a gunny sack than take advantage of a thrall like that.
The samurai opened his brown eyes at the fervency in his words.
I was a puppet of the Notdanslecker.
Theo told him.
I know what it's like to have no will of my own.
Theo hesitated, remembering the horrors.
The things that queen made me do still give me nightmares. We'd capture second landers or first landers and drag them to her court, and she'd force me to...
His voice caught, and he took a moment to get himself back under control. Quieter, making sure the samurai was paying attention, Theo went on.
Her favorite was mothers and daughters. She'd make me acquire them, usually unicorns or other first-tier second-landers. Then make me participate because she knew how much I loathed it. Kept trying to break me.
He straightened, fighting the burning in his eyes.
I could spend the next 10,000 years doing good deeds, and it'll never make up for the things that were done by my hand.
He took an unsteady breath, remembering the begging, the screaming, the blood.
I can't make up for it. But I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying anyway.
Masaaki was watching him in careful silence. Softly, he said,
If I didn't know better, vampire, I would almost say you're telling the truth.
I'll never violate the free will of someone vulnerable to me.
Theo said, with the most strength of anything he'd ever said.
Never. We do this, you're under my protection.
Instantly, Masaaki's entire body tightened like the strings of a harp. Theo immediately winced, realizing he'd pricked a samurai's legendary honor.
Which probably wasn't the best thing to say, considering.
Masaaki's brown eyes were narrowed.
You will no more protect me than an emperor's little white dog.
The Yatagarasu bit out.
And if you try, I'll cut you from groin to sternum and leave your corpse for the flies. After I cut off your manhood and feed it to pigs and make you watch.
The vampire chuckled, realizing that, on the right day, The Atagarasu probably had the capability of doing just that.
Agreed, my sword-slinging friend.
Theo took a deep breath.
Well, here goes. You want it fast or slow?
And in that question, all of the samurai's bravado left him in an instant, replaced with that hunted look, the nervous flicker of his eyes between Theo's face and his hand, the sudden panting breaths.
Slow.
The man whimpered. Nobody ever picked slow. Nobody, that was, except those who had been fed on by vampires for centuries. Those poor, broken souls who had been used like a buffet for psychopaths. Already, the Atagarasu's terrified shaking had returned, and with it, Theo felt a rise of fury for his own kind. It was the exact look he had received from long-term slaves in his queen's harem for centuries before he escaped.
You got it.
Theo said in a whisper, fighting the old revulsion for what he was.
Thigh or arm?
Please, not the chest.
The Atagarasu managed, a frightened whimper.
Or the belly. Or throat.
Theo felt a twist of revulsion that the man would even think he'd have to tell him that.
Okay. We'll go with the arm.
He pressed his palm gently to Masaaki's upper arm, and the Atagarasu whimpered and cringed in reply. Theo's heart went out to him.
Easy, Masaaki. Listen to my voice, okay?
He put his other hand on Masaaki's other shoulder, just in case the samurai started to thrash. Masaaki shivered and nodded, though the shaking was so violent that Theo wasn't sure the man was completely aware of what was happening around him. Then Theo heard it. It was just a breath, just a whisper, something not meant to carry past the samurai's lips. But Theo heard it.
Please, don't hurt me.
I won't.
Theo said, feeling that old rage that had sent him fleeing the Nightlands.
And when I'm done, I'm gonna hunt down whoever did this to you and rip them apart.
And, instead of getting indignant and threatening him and talking about little dogs, Masaaki let out a sob of relief.
He's close.
Theo thought, watching what was left of the man's pride disintegrate.
Now or never. Here goes.
He extended his fangs. Immediately, Masaaki screamed and tried to roll away, scrambling and thrashing like a dying animal, making the Atagarasu's soul energies flicker even more dangerously towards extinguishing completely.
Easy!
Theo cried, grabbing him and holding on, fighting the man's increasingly wild panic.
I'm not gonna hurt you, I swear. Hell, you'll probably even call me up for beers after this is all over in a few weeks.
He pushed Masaaki back to the floor and kept him there as the Atagarasu panted, eyes wide and rolling.
Relax, okay? Relax. See how I'm not hurting you? Not drinking from you?
Masaaki was totally stiff, a little whine coming from his lips as his body started to vibrate violently in his fear. The man squeezed his eyes shut, his breaths coming faster and faster. At the door, the vampire queen knocked, making both of them stiffen. Theo saw the horror on the Atagarasu's wide-eyed face, the complete shame as he looked between the door and Theo.
Stay out there!
Theo shouted at the door, knowing the last thing they needed was for the queen to see her friend sobbing like a child at his hands.
Easy.
Theo said.
Tell me about Japan.
For a moment, it looked as if the Atagarasu would ignore him, continuing to hyperventilate.
I miss the cherry trees.
Masaaki finally managed, his voice building in a whine.
You're pretty good with that sword,
Theo said as he continued to extend his fangs.
Almost got me with it a couple of times. You a master?
Masaaki somehow found a way to focus.
I'm rusty. It's been many years since I was allowed to touch my daisho.
I'll bet.
Theo said, once his fangs were in place.
You ready for this?
Masaaki nodded, and there were tears in his eyes.
Okay. Here it comes. It'll feel cold.
Masaaki tensed as he felt the rush of ice enter his system, then gasped when the vampire's Nocht Lashmar flooded through his being like a balm. Years of terror evaporated as if it had never been, filling him with a desire to be close, a desire to be held, a desire to nurture the beast holding him. Knowing it was the poison did nothing to order Masaaki's addled mind. He felt better than he'd ever felt in his life, vibrant, full of energy, full of passion. He suddenly found himself gasping and staring up into the vampire's soft green eyes, felt the heat of the vampire's palm, the pain-pleasure of the prick of his arm, the desire to get closer, to put himself against the vampire's chest, to be held within his arms.
Oh no,
Masaaki thought, realizing he was losing control. Never, not in his most vivid nightmares, had Masaaki ever thought being enthralled by a lord would be this bad. He'd thought he would have some control over it, that discipline of the mind could act as some antidote for the carnal rush of feelings that the Nacht Lashmaur would bring.
oh no.
Masaaki thought, feeling his every reservation and hesitation being ripped away by the delicious ice now cooling the heat of his fury, easing the pain of his terror. To his absolute horror, he felt a new heat forming in his groin, one that he could no more stop than he could force the snow to stop falling on Mount Fuji.
No!
Masaaki thought, slamming his fist into the floor with a whine to keep himself from reaching for the vampire, to feel the delicious flesh against his body, to attempt to mount it.
No. I am samurai. I will not dishonor myself with this beast.
But then Theo coughed uncomfortably and shifted on the floor. The urge to reach for the vampire was so strong that Masaaki couldn't contain it. He suddenly needed him, needed to be close, and Masaaki could no more stop himself from reaching for him than he could change the location of the sun.
I've lost control.
Masaaki realized, even as he reached for Theo's waistline. Never, not in 7 winters of man, would Masaaki have thought the poison of the Nacht Lashmaur would outweigh his hatred of vampires.
I can't control it.
He thought on a wave of complete and total horror.
I can't control it.
He wanted the vampire to touch him so badly that he was willing to touch Theo. His fingers found the beltline of the vampire's pants, making the vampire start.
And we're done.
Theo said, quickly retracting his fangs and pulling away.
No!
Masaaki heard himself blurt, in complete panic at the idea that Theo meant to leave him. He rolled forward in desperation, reaching for the vampire with both arms now.
Please don't leave. Please. Hold me.
The voice was not his, but it came from his mouth, spurned by his feelings, his panic. And it was panic. Masaaki felt that his world would end if he lost sight of Theo, and just the brief moments of feeling his skin against his own had been complete bliss, a soothing balm to his soul, one he had to have again. Masaaki rolled forward, intent on pressing his advantage. Theo caught his arm gently, like forged wrought iron, and there was a mixture of shame and compassion in the vampire's eyes as he said,
Look, I know you can't help it. I know it's the Nacht Lashmaur, and I have no intention of letting you do something we'll both regret. How about I just hold you for a couple of hours until the rush wears off and you stop wanting to get in my pants, okay?
That will never happen!
Masaaki breathed, thinking of the gloriously smooth skin, the huge, beautiful eyes. Masaaki could imagine how delicious it felt to be held by the vampire, leaning into his touch, wanting more.
Yep.
Theo said, easily twisting Masaaki around and grabbing him in a bear hug.
I think we'll just stay here like this for a few hours, at least until you start talking about driving swords into my guts again, okay?
Feeling the vampire holding him like a lover, knowing the hardness in his groin was for him, Masaaki began to cry, both in relief and despair. Despair that he had fallen so low. Relief that Theo wouldn't take advantage of it.
Nobody has to know.
Theo said, as Masaaki shivered with combined need and revilement.
Just hang in there, we'll pretend nothing ever happened.
But something had happened. And now Masaaki wanted only to take the vampire like a lover. Or be taken. It was so horrifying to him that Masaaki just let himself devolve completely into sobs. Horrified, gut-wrenching sobs that laid his soul bare to this monster who was cradling him, but who as yet had done what he could to keep his dignity intact. At the door, Bonnie called, "What's happening?" Masaaki stiffened, realizing the vampire queen was on the verge of opening the door and seeing him sprawling across the vampire's chest, writhing like a horny dog.
Please go.
Masaaki sobbed, knowing that having his daimyo seeing him in such a state would leave him completely unmanned. The queen hesitated at the door, but after a moment, the ancestors blessed him, and she walked away instead of displaying her usual petulance and coming inside. As soon as she was gone, Masaaki felt a wash of relief, and it was as if a dam opened up, and he simply sobbed into the vampire's arms. All the centuries of fear, all the violation, all the agonies and torments, all the years of wanting to die, all torn from the depths of his mind on waves of grief and self-loathing with the simple knowledge that he wanted to make love to the creature holding him.
It's okay, dude.
Theo said softly.
I know it's not you. I know it's just the Nachtlagsmar. Just focus on how I'm holding you. It'll help.
What little self-respect that Masaaki still managed to maintain was shattered in that moment of total horror, knowing he was being held in place by a vampire who knew what he wanted, revolted by that fact, yet nonetheless wanting to tear off their clothes so they were skin to skin, wanting nothing more than to have the vampire ride him like a stallion so that he could feel that presence more completely. Nothing. Not in all his years of torment in an endless chain of vampire lairs had prepared him for this moment of total, soul-crushing shame. If Masaaki could have moved his arms, he would have found his wakizashi and immediately begun ritual seppuku. Only the vampire lord's iron-strong arms cinched around his sides kept him in place.
I swear it'll help.
The vampire urged.
Just think about how I'm holding you. It's a trick I've learned helping thralls. If you focus on the feeling of me around you, you stop feeling the need.
Still choking on whimpers of humiliation, Masaaki squeezed his eyes shut, willing to do anything to get the carnal desire out of his head. And it was just as the vampire had promised. The more he focused on the vampire's warm embrace, the less Masaaki felt a need to be with him, and the more the flames in his manhood ebbed, until finally, several hours later, he was able to think again.
Release me.
Masaaki croaked as the vampire continued to hold him.
Oh, I'm going to put my foot through your eye socket, vampire.
You're not going to do anything dumb like reach for those swords, are you?
Theo asked.
If only to cut you into 1,000...
Masaaki gasped as the Nachtlagsmar took a hold of his mind, flooding him with a wave of horror at the thought of Theo getting cut to pieces, the thought so powerful, it was more potent than a kick to the balls. The vampire chuckled.
From now on, I'll be able to sleep like a baby around you, samurai.
And it was true. There was absolutely no possibility of Masaaki doing anything to harm the vampire lord. Even the thought of something happening to him was making him physically ill.
Release me.
Masaaki croaked.
It's temporary.
The vampire said.
We'll get through this.
Release me!
Masaaki screamed. The vampire did. Masaaki immediately scrambled away, only to feel a surge of panic that he had left Theo's immediate presence. He fought the instant and almost overpowering urge to turn back and return to the vampire's arms. Like a siren's call, the contact called to him, tugging at his soul, while at the same time the idea of being near a vampire repulsed him as the memories finally started to return, no longer dissolved by the heady rush of the Lord's initial dose of venom, giving Masaaki only a very small window of space that was not too close to the monster to make him scream, but not too far to make him lose control and want to rush back. Fighting the dual desire and phobia, Masaaki clenched his fist as hard as he could and kept his eyes closed, trying in rising desperation to maintain calm. Theo cleared his throat. When he looked, the vampire was giving him a commiserating glance.
Takes about 3 weeks to cold turkey, though we might be able to get it done in 2 if I drain you a little bit here and there. Suck some of the poison out.
Shaking, knowing that the vampire had seen his dishonor laid completely bare, Masaaki just nodded.
How you feeling?
The vampire asked. sounding almost gentle.
Like I want to ram a blade through your...
Masaaki gasped again, and this time he couldn't fight the need to return to the vampire's arms, so strong was the pull to make sure he was okay.
It's gonna be a lot better for you if you don't think of ways to kill me for the next couple weeks.
The vampire said, his pale green eyes filled with understanding as he pulled back to hold him by his shoulders at arm's length.
It's a lot like the Notdansliker that way. Wouldn't be an effective enthralling if thralls could, say, stab me to death with a sword when I'm sleeping.
Just hearing those words out of Theo's mouth made Masaaki's stomach twist in horror, and he almost retched at the sudden fear of something killing the vampire lord. He quickly pushed forward again and lay his head on Theo's chest, just to assure himself the vampire hadn't been stabbed. So deep was the terror of losing him.
No one will stab you.
Masaaki promised.
You have my oath. I will protect you.
He sank into the embrace, relief overpowering even his fear. And then, remembering he had a daimyo and that he was hugging a vampire, Masaaki pulled himself away, nauseated with the dishonor, the fear crashing back into place like a sledgehammer to his gut.
3 weeks.
The vampire said, watching him carefully.
We'll make it 2.
Masaaki said, unable to look at him.
You got it.
The vampire agreed.
Cold turkey.
He got to his feet.
Until then, let's go find someone to help us feed your queen.
He offered his hand. Masaaki glanced at it, knowing that, in another life, he would have spat on the vampire's pale palm for the disgrace of offering to help him, a samurai, rise. He would have shivered at the very idea of a vampire's hand that close to him. He would have cringed in terror, tried to back away. Very reluctantly, Masaaki took the vampire's hand. A genuine smile spread over Theo's face as the bigger man hefted him to his feet.
I think we're off to a good start.
He held Masaaki's hand for much longer than he needed to, and Masaaki didn't try to pull away, the drugged part of him reveling in the contact, even as the rational part was steeped in shame and dread.
2 weeks.
Masaaki repeated.
Cold turkey.
The vampire agreed.
We'll binge Star Wars or Firefly or something while you go through withdrawal.
Masaaki nodded, his anxiety warring with the poison until it finally forced him to release the vampire's hand.
Does it
He swallowed hard.
get any easier?
Theo winced.
You want the honest answer or the I don't want to get stabbed answer?
Honest.
Masaaki gritted, wanting nothing more than to stab him. Instantly, he felt a heady rush that wiped his desire away, and he had to fight the urge to touch him again, just to make sure that no one else had stabbed him.
No,
Theo said, watching him with commiseration.
it doesn't. Every day it'll get worse. This is gonna be the hardest thing you've ever done. By the end of the 2 weeks, you're gonna be begging me to zap you.
Considering that Masaaki was already feeling the desire for the sweet pain of the vampire's fangs once again, he swallowed hard and nodded.
Let's go find my daimyo before she tries to have sex with that braying donkey of a barista.
Theo hastily got to his feet.
Yeah, that wouldn't be good. You want me to just go grab her while you...
No!
Masaaki cried, immediately lunging to catch up and leaving his sword on the floor. Then, catching himself, Masaaki stiffly collected his katana and said,
No. I'll go too.
The vampire grimaced.
I'm about to have a shadow in the shape of a yatakarasu, aren't I?
I have to make sure you're okay.
Masaaki managed, struggling with the poison even then overwhelming his senses. And he did, too. It was a pang of desperation that he had to ensure the vampire lord was alive and well at all times.
Yeah, it's not my first rodeo.
Theo said, looking both nervous and sheepish.
It's just the first time I've done it with a guy who could kill me.
No one's going to kill you.
Masaaki said quickly, distressed by the thought.
Yeah, right now.
Theo said.
Say that again in a week and a half when you're jonesing and I won't give it to you. I'm gonna have to take your swords from you so you don't use them on one of us.
As Masaaki tensed at the idea, Theo chuckled and gestured to the hotel room door.
Lead the way, samurai. We'll figure it out later.
Chapter 21. A Second Time. Bjorn was strapped over a table in his cell when the vampire queen wandered into his prison a second time. This time, she was with a vampire lord. The silver lacing his blood was unmistakable, even with the purple poking through. As instantly as the last time, Bjorn felt his heart start to pound out of control.
Take me!
He tried to say. He would have called it 100 times over, but the slavers had forced a circular gag into his mouth, leaving his words mumbled and slurry. Nonetheless, it got her attention. "Why is he tied over the table like that?" she asked. The lord that was with her turned, then jerked in horror.
Oh my fuck, that's a Barghest.
"I want him," the vampire queen said, and Bjorn melted with relief.
Oh fuck, no.
The lord said, his words shattering Bjorn's relief like knives twisting in his heart. The bastard grabbed her and steered her back toward the twins.
No fucking way. Those things are...
He shuddered, obviously having had experience with them.
He'd kill you, dear.
To the slavers, he said,
We'll take the twins.
No!
Bjorn started thrashing against the table, straining against the chains that held him down.
Which one of the twins?
One of the slavers said smugly.
Both of the twins.
The lord said,
You argue with me, you asshole, and I'll take all three of them and the money back for the trouble you've caused my friend here. I heard what she spent on that Yatagarasu. You've got another thing coming if you think that's going to happen again.
But Bjorn wasn't listening. The bolts securing the table to the floor started to jerk out of the concrete, and his antics had drawn the attention of everyone in the room. One of the slavers laughed.
Seems our little Barghest has a hard-on for the pretty queen.
The queen, bless her, blinked at him and said, He's really strong.
Tell you what,
One of the slavers said.
Take all three. Get them off our hands. We'll be killing them in a few days anyway. I wasn't born yesterday.
The lord snapped.
We'll take the twins. That's it.
Bjorn yanked the table the rest of the way out of the floor and used the leverage of his feet on the concrete to hurl himself and table towards the bars. The closest table legs caught the floor and toppled, throwing him onto his side against the bars. Still chained to the device, Bjorn smashed into the cage front and bent it outward with his back, almost touching the vampire lord's shins.
Yeah, we're getting out of here.
The lord said, taking a quick step backwards.
Stardust, we're going. Now.
He's asking me to take him, the girl insisted, as the vampire steered her from the room.
Yeah, about that.
The lord said.
That's kind of like a rabid, starving 2,000-pound tiger asking you to take him home.
I want him! Realizing that she was getting away for the second time, Bjorn let out a scream of rage and bit down on the metal hoop in his mouth, crushing it. Spitting out blood and pieces of metal, he shouted,
Come back! Please come back!
As if that wasn't a perfect demonstration of why you don't want him.
Bjorn heard the vampire lord say as they disappeared up the hall.
Someday, sweetie, you'll figure things out, but until then, just take it from me. Barghests are...
And then she was gone again, wrested from him by a vampire lord. First a Yatagarasu, then a vampire lord. Panting, spitting blood, Bjorn added them both to his list of people to kill once he was free.
Getting away! She's getting away!
Screaming his rage, Bjorn threw all of his weight at the chains holding him to the metal table. The table bowed inward. Then the chains around his neck snapped. Howling now, Bjorn strained backwards, making the table creak in complaint. More chains snapped against his spine. In the hall, the slavers were yelling to go get the taser. Bjorn thrashed himself free of the table, so enraged now that he was seeing nothing but a red haze. He kicked the table into the wall. Then, grunting, he started straining at his arms. He felt the padlock snap just below his armpits first, then in succession, down his elbows to the ones at his wrists. He pulled his arms around in front of him, then started ramming his silver-encased fists into the concrete floor, trying to get the fused metal balls off of his hands. The silver hurt, like liquid fire seeping into his skin, sizzling, burning. He felt his fists and arms start to bleed inside the metal sleeves. Getting away. She was getting away again. He wouldn't survive watching her walk out again. He had to catch her before she disappeared. Bjorn got up and started slamming the metal cage into oblivion. Just as he was mangling a hole big enough to step through, the silver bulb surrounding his fist got caught between two of the bars, and Bjorn had to pause to wrench himself free. A moment later, one of the slavers came running down the hall, a gun in hand. Bjorn bared his teeth and ripped out the last of the cage holding him in place, rushing the little asshole, expecting to take a bullet. He could take a bullet, even if it was silver, if that meant he'd catch up with the little queen. The gun fired, but it wasn't a bullet. Something hit him in the chest. The jolt of electricity that followed made his legs go out from underneath him. He grunted and went to his knees as the pulse went on, locking his muscles around him.
No!
His mind screamed, as nothing would cooperate for him. From up the tunnel, he heard a vehicle start, heard the screech of tires. Then they shot him again. A drug this time.
No!
Bjorn's mind whimpered as everything started to fade around him. He felt himself slumping forward and struggled to stay on his hands and knees.
No! Odin, please. Don't let this happen.
They shot him again. Whether it was the drug or the taser, Bjorn wasn't sure, because he immediately slipped into the void. Chapter 22. The New Rules. Bonnie felt uncomfortable when a stiff-backed Masaaki interrupted her latest Chuck Norris binge with Angus in order to summon her to a meeting in the dining area. When she got there, it was him and the new vampire lord sitting at the dining room table, looking completely serious. Frowning, she lowered her bowl of popcorn to the table and warily sat down across from them. "What's up?"
Daimyo, thank you for joining us,
Masaaki said. He had once again adopted the firm, take-no-shit, hard-ass approach he used in his martial arts instruction, and he looked the same way he did when he was about to whack her for not keeping her knees bent far enough in a kata.
We need to discuss your awakening with you.
That again. She resisted the urge to roll her eyes. Oh yeah? Bonnie grabbed another cheesy handful of popcorn and threw it in her mouth. Crunching, she sat around it. What about it? Theo wordlessly took the bowl and slid it across the table, out of her reach. Bonnie narrowed her eyes at him, but because he had become her main food source, she didn't throat punch him like he deserved.
This is serious, Daimyo. We don't want you killing anyone when you lose your virginity.
Bonnie stiffened all over. Guys, I'm getting really creeped out. You want to keep talking about that?
You keep avoiding us.
Theo said gently.
And this isn't something you can avoid, Bonnie.
Pretty sure I can't avoid sex, Bonnie said.
No.
Masaaki said, shaking his head.
You will not avoid this, Daimyo. This is your duty as a queen. You have a consort now. You will submit to him, and he will help you learn to control yourself.
Bonnie choked on her popcorn. Submit to him? No, thank you. She looked Theo over. He was cute enough. Startlingly pale green eyes, nice jawline, big thuggish upper body, strapped thighs, playfully tousled brown hair. But the thought of getting him in bed with her had about the same appeal as molesting a horse.
Would you rather kill 12 people in a bloodlust?
Masaaki demanded. Of course not, Bonnie cried.
Then let him teach you.
It sounded like a plea.
Please, Wonko.
Bonnie grimaced. Look, I told you guys I wasn't interested in sex. You really don't have to worry about that. It's vibrators and dildos and romance novels for me until I'm like 80. No sweat. So, I'm just gonna go back to my movie now. She stood and reached for her popcorn bowl.
I think what Masaaki is trying to say,
Theo said. putting his big hand firmly on the bowl, keeping it in place.
is that he's scared shitless of you.
Masaaki grunted. "Oh, come on!" Bonnie cried. "You're like 5 times stronger than me. He should be afraid of you!"
Theo has himself under control.
Masaaki said.
You do not, Wonko.
"You mean you're enthralled and you're not thinking straight," Bonnie retorted. Ever since the two men had done their little bonding ritual in the hotel room, Masaaki had barely been more than 5 steps away from the vampire, and it rankled her how quickly he'd dropped her for Theo. "It's just the Nightlander poison," she told herself for the 100th time. "He doesn't like it any more than I do." She'd seen the look on Masaaki's face as they came out of the hotel room. Like there was internal hemorrhaging, his face had been so red. At least, however, he had been alive, no longer pale, completely thriving. Like he'd just run a mile, chugged down a veggie smoothie, and gulped a few dozen shots of caffeine. His blood web had flared ever since, so bright it was almost hard to look at. It had startled her how lifeless he had been in comparison, and that she completely hadn't noticed because he was her only food source, and some stupid, desperate lizard part of her wasn't willing to think about him not being able to feed her. Even then, Masaaki's gold energy was laced with Theo's silver, a darker, richer silver than Bonnie's, laced with little streaks of purple here and there, reminding her of the sacrifice the samurai had made for her. She knew she should be grateful that Theo's enthralling had kept her friend alive, but his interest in teaching her martial arts, or anything for that matter, had become lackluster at best, his eyes always wandering mid-lesson to make sure Theo was in the room with them.
Listen,
Theo said gently.
if there was another way to do this, sweetie, believe me, I'd be the first to volunteer.
He made a face.
As it is, we need to do it soon, before something doesn't trigger it spontaneously.
Like your horse-faced barista trying to kiss you.
Masaaki agreed. "What's this it you guys keep talking about?" Bonnie asked, wary now. Theo hesitated.
Let's just say a new queen can go a little nuts the first few times. Best to let her wear herself out on someone who can take it.
"Define nuts," Bonnie said, her heart starting to pound, her face superheating at the way Masaaki was nodding emphatically.
Like?
Theo sucked in his breath and let it out through his teeth.
Well, I'll probably get stabbed a few 100 times and you'll be too out of it to realize you're hurting me.
"Yeah, I don't think I'm interested," Bonnie said. "No problem." Masaaki made a frustrated sound and Theo groaned.
Look,
The vampire lord said, carefully folding his hands in front of him. Bonnie immediately took back her popcorn bowl, tugging it out of reach of his big arm. If Theo noticed, his only response was a slight twitch of his eyes. Like a bulldozer, he went on.
sex produces energy. You know how you need to use your fangs to eat or you'll die? Well, that's not the only way you can get that energy.
Totally not wanting to hear that, Bonnie grabbed her bowl, stood up, and said, "Yeah, that's okay. I said I'm not gonna—"
Sit down, daimyo! You need to hear this.
Bonnie, having been trained to do whatever the hard-ass Japanese guy said, lest she get slapped by a stick, sat without thinking. Calmly, Theo went on.
All right, I won't sugarcoat this. A guy shoots a massive amount of energy into a girl when he ejaculates. Any guy makes what you draw out with your fangs seem like a drop in the bucket. It's gonna be enjoyable for you. A lot more enjoyable for you than for me.
"Sounds like a hard pass," Bonnie said, remembering the last time she had completely checked out when she had gotten some of Theo's venom.
You don't get to pass on this one.
Theo said, his eyes showing commiseration.
The longer you go, the more that pressure builds. Until one day, anything could trigger it. Maybe you're walking past some dude in a grocery store and he just jacked off in his truck and the energy hits you and boom! You start killing people in the middle of Fred Meyer's. That what you want?
Bonnie grimaced.
Look, I know how you feel.
Theo said.
I really do. Most queens in the third realm never learn to control themselves. They don't have to. There's always fresh meat for them to feed off once the last one is dead. That's why Masaaki wants me to train you.
Doubt it, Bonnie thought, sick at the idea of having to train herself not to kill people with sex.
Look.
Theo leaned across the table to her.
You're a queen. You can either awaken the hard way or the easy way. Hard way, Masaaki's probably right, and one day some switch will just go off in your head, and you'll end up killing everyone in a 1,000-foot radius, and we'll have to pick up and move to a new country.
Bonnie considered plucking at the popcorn. So far, everything they'd told her had been true, in vivid, gory detail, and that was not something she wanted on her record. And the easy way?
Let him teach you about sex.
Masaaki said firmly.
Train your mind and body, like you train with me in class.
I really don't like the idea of that, Bonnie growled. I get creeped out by naked people, remember?
We can do it clothed.
Theo said.
I'll just use an old shirt.
Bonnie narrowed her eyes at him at how casually he'd said that. Because you think I'm gonna stab you? Theo chuckled.
Oh, I know so.
There was absolutely no joking in his pale green eyes as he said it either. Fuck. Okay, Bonnie said. But
Excellent.
Masaaki said, pounding his fist on the table.
Then it is agreed. He'll start tonight.
No! Bonnie snapped. He won't start tonight. He'll start whenever I'm ready. That made Masaaki go stiff.
But you just said you won't be ready.
Look! I'm thinking about it, okay? Bonnie snapped. That's the best you're gonna get out of me right now. Got it? She yanked her popcorn bowl back into her hands and stood again. Theo glanced from Masaaki to her, then sighed and held up his hands.
All right, we'll put it off a little bit. Just let me know when you're ready, and...
He grimaced.
Keep the movies PG-13 and no porn.
I don't watch porn. Just the thought of porn made her violently ill.
Great. And don't interact with strangers either. You can still go to stores, but no in-depth conversations. In and out, no chatting. Just make it quick. You're not that close to the edge. You're only 19, but best not to take a lot of chances.
And avoid Fred Meyer.
Masaaki agreed, nodding.
Second-landers are known for being promiscuous, and they hate third-landers as a rule, so the door elves will probably try to trigger you out of spite.
Theo's brow took on a tiny frown and glanced at Masaaki. But Bonnie was already agreeing. You got it, she said. No strangers, no porn, no elves. Let you know when I'm ready to bang. Got it. Going back to my movie now. She was already turning to leave. As long as Theo kept feeding her, and feeding from Theo was like jet fuel compared to Masaaki's gasoline, she could avoid a few strangers in the name of world peace. Chapter 23. The Samurai's Dilemma. Masaaki watched Bonnie and Theo climb the stairs up the front porch, and immediately his gut twisted with shame at the depths of his relief upon seeing the vampire lord again. Theo and Bonnie had wanted to go outside to discuss delivery arrangements for the Fae, and Masaaki had forced himself not to follow the vampire lord around like a starving dog. Yet, even knowing that it was the Lord's magic that spawned that unnatural desire to see the vampire lord, Masaaki's heart still lurched with anxiety as the two vampires paused on the front porch to argue.
Maybe he's not coming inside,
Masaaki thought, watching the queen raise her arms and gesture in disgust. He reached nervously for the door handle. Immediately, Masaaki forced himself to pull his hand back from the latch. Enthralled. He was enthralled. He felt another wash of humiliating despair, then took several big steps away from the door. He could fight it. He could just spend a couple weeks on his own, let the Lord feed her for a while he recovered. But then the Lord stepped through the door, and Masaaki took 3 unconscious steps forward and met him as he entered. He stopped himself just short of taking the man's hand, but it was an overwhelming urge to feel the vampire's skin against his own. He bit down another sob of humiliation and looked away. The Lord met Masaaki's eyes before Masaaki dropped them in shame, and in the silence that followed, Theo cleared his throat.
Hey, Bonnie, We can argue about this later. How about you go get the car and pick up some clothes for the Fae, cotton or hemp, natural fibers, okay? Oh, and some pretty stone bracelets and stuff. They'll like that.
What am I, the rich errand girl? Bonnie snapped, oblivious to Masaaki's inner anguish. Just go spend my money and bring you home something nice?
Make sure you buy some hot peppers.
Theo said, still watching Masaaki.
They'll like those.
The vampire queen made a disgusted sound. Masaaki, let's go, Bonnie said. Masaaki swallowed and shivered at the agonizing thought of leaving Theo behind.
Masaaki and I need to chat about important stuff,
Theo said.
Go do something else for a while.
Bonnie's mouth fell open in a slight gasp. You are both assholes, she snapped, when Masaaki couldn't bring himself to leave the Lord's presence after being apart for over 2 hours. Bonnie turned and stomped back down the steps, went to the car, and slammed the Mercedes door shut. The engine rumbled to life and gravel flung out from under the tires, pattering up onto the porch as the car spun out of the driveway and roared off. Theo tentatively pulled the door shut in the silence that followed. For a long moment, neither of them said anything, though Masaaki could feel the vampire watching him.
You feeling okay?
Theo asked. Masaaki shook his head, awash with despair. He wanted, more than anything, to step up and be close to the vampire. Just to touch him would be enough. Theo seemed to understand.
Okay, pal. How about a hug?
When Masaaki didn't move, but instead gripped the hilt of his sword with bone-white knuckles, the Lord opened his arms in wary invitation. At the gesture, Masaaki lost control. Masaaki drooped with relief and, despite himself, stepped into the vampire's embrace. Against the bigger man's bicep, Masaaki said,
When I am free of this, I'm going to draw steel needles through your nuts and hang you by your thumbs.
The vampire chuckled above him.
Feeling better?
Fantastic.
Masaaki growled against his arm.
Aside from the fact I'm hugging a vampire,
You'll get used to it.
Masaaki stiffened.
I won't.
Never. He'd rather die. Theo laughed and thumped him on the back, then lowered his arms, releasing him. Masaaki, shamefully, stayed several seconds longer than necessary, soaking in the relief, before regaining control of himself and pulling back again. Cocking his head at Masaaki, the vampire said,
You'll get used to it. I've made you my pet project, Crow. Seems you've decided to surround yourself with vampires. Last thing you should have to do is live in fear the rest of your life. I'm gonna fix that.
Masaaki's eyes widened.
That was not the agreement.
Theo grinned at him.
No, but I'm the vampire and you're the thrall, and I've got a soft spot for former slaves. How about another hug?
Masaaki ground his teeth and kept his feet rooted in place.
Fuck you.
The vampire laughed.
You sure?
Masaaki gasped, shame and horror and humiliation racking his being. But he could not make himself step away from the vampire's presence. What was worse, his heart began to pound with anticipation at prolonged contact with the Lord's glassy, smooth skin. He shuddered and closed his eyes. The cross-shaped cut. Theo gave him a long, considering look.
I know what you're thinking. You're thinking that the moment you find yourself alone again, you're going to ram one of those swords through your gut and cut yourself open. Probably as painfully as possible.
Masaaki shuddered under the urge to do just that. And the disgrace of wanting to move back into the vampire's arms anyway.
So tell me,
Theo said.
Wouldn't it be better to learn to trust me as a friend and let me help you overcome everything those bastards did to you? Make you that warrior again? Give you back what they took from you?
Masaaki felt himself shaking. Shaking with the nauseating fear of the vampire in front of him. Shaking with disgust at himself. Shaking with the need to step closer. He just shook his head, unable to respond.
I can help you,
Theo said.
1,000 times more than that naive little queen who can't control herself. She was probably doing more trauma than anything else. I have control of myself. You saw that in the hotel room. I saw you recognize it. I know you know I can help.
Masaaki sucked in a wretched breath and let it out in a low, desperate sob. More than anything, he wanted the vampire's help. He wanted to be whole again more than life itself. Yet the creature terrified him. What he'd done to him terrified him. His mind was warring with his instincts. He was a twisting ball of terror inside, feeling trapped and hopeless. Yet, even humiliated at being helpless, ashamed at the instinct to surrender to the vampire's desires, Masaaki felt that tiny tingle of hope.
You just have to do one thing for me to make it work.
Theo said.
One thing, and we'll get you back on your feet again where a vampire can sink his teeth into you and you can still keep your head long enough to blast the fucker into the next millennium.
Masaaki blinked back tears and looked up at the Lord. For a long time, he simply scanned the vampire's pale green eyes.
What thing?
He finally whispered. The vampire lifted his arms again in invitation.
Trust me, Masaaki.
Masaaki eyed his arms, swallowing down his fear.
Trust you?
Trust me not to hurt you when I touch you.
Masaaki felt bile rise in his throat, and he looked away. But the vampire lord went on.
Trust me not to take advantage of your feelings for me. Trust me to have the control to stop if you ask me. Trust me to never take what is not freely given. Trust me not to use my strength against you. Trust me. I'll take care of the rest.
Masaaki swallowed and stared down at the floor for long minutes.
You've done this before, haven't you?
The vampire grinned.
Well, never with a guy, especially not one who can gut me alive, but yeah, I have.
He continued to hold his arms open, waiting. Masaaki considered the vampire's bigger, stronger body, then his own hands, fisted on his swords. Very slowly, he unlocked his fingers and pulled them away from his blades. Stiffly, he allowed himself to give in to the impulse to step forward. He tensed as the vampire wrapped his arms around him again.
Okay, just relax.
The vampire continued to hold him.
I'm here, man. It's gonna get better, okay?
Something within Masaaki shattered then, and he lost control again. Once more, he was grateful that the queen was not there to see him completely break down in the vampire lord's arms. He felt his tears pour forth on a humiliating wave of gratitude. Once he finished bawling, covering the vampire's shirt with his tears, he tried to wrench away to go hide his humiliation. He might as well have tried to wrench away from the grip of a granite statue.
No shame, bud.
The vampire continued to hold him.
Steel needles through your nuts.
But when the vampire just chuckled, he eventually relaxed and just spent several minutes listening to him breathe. Eventually, he tried again to pull away, and this time the vampire let him.
Do that anytime you need.
Theo said. Then the vampire lord flinched.
Well, as long as it's not in the middle of Walmart or something.
Masaaki grunted, fighting a clashing inner turmoil of gratitude and shame. Clearing his throat, he decided to change the subject.
You must teach Bonnie about sex.
Theo groaned.
Do we have to go back to that again? She's totally not interested.
You said if I stayed behind today, you would talk to her about it. What did she say?
Theo winced.
Something like, in your sad and pathetic dreams, dude.
That did sound like something his daimyo would say. The stubborn fool.
I will talk to her when she gets back. She will agree.
Theo rolled his eyes.
You can't tell her to have sex with me, Masaaki.
I can, and I will.
If he was going to swallow his pride and hug a vampire, his daimyo could certainly accept this lord as her mate. After all, it seemed a perfectly decent match to Masaaki. Theodore's age and experience, Bonnie's money and naivete. It would allow her to relinquish the position of daimyo to Theo, a man who already knew how to wield that power, and start managing the womanly arts of money and entertainment. Masahaki would see that she was enrolled in music and homemaking classes. Her cleaning and decorating skills, as far as Masahaki had seen, had been lacking. But Theo was giving him a skeptical look.
Why am I getting the idea you've got a lot to learn about women?
She will do as she's told.
Yeah,
Theo laughed.
you've got a lot to learn about women.
He looked like he was going to say more, but his phone started making a horrible cacophony in his shirt pocket, and he yanked it out.
Hold that thought.
He put his ear to the phone.
Yeah.
Masaaki waited and watched as the vampire suddenly went pale.
Mandy?
Theo asked.
Where are you?
The vampire's hand, Masaaki noticed, started shaking. Then, much too soon, Theo was lowering the phone.
Oh shit. Oh shit. Oh shit.
He licked his lips, looked at Masaaki, then at the front door. Masaaki watched Theo swallow.
I've gotta go, like right now.
Masaaki felt a stab of panic that the vampire was about to leave again.
Where?
He hated the way it sounded nervous, close to begging.
Fuck. Kenai, look man, I'm really sorry, I'll be right back.
How far is Kenai?
Masaaki managed.
Like 4 hours away.
Masaaki felt his heart lurch. 4 hours?
You can't.
He blurted, before he could stop himself. Theo glanced at the door, then at Masaaki again.
Okay, look, I gotta go rip off a few heads. You can tag along if you want, but I have to go, now. They gave her 4 hours to live. I might not make it in time.
Masaaki frowned.
That sounds like a trap.
Theo laughed.
Yeah, well, I've had worse. You coming? I'm out of here. Find me a piece of paper to leave a note. Fast.
Caught between the inconvenience of leaving his daimyo alone for a day and the unspeakable horror of going without Theo's presence for 8 hours, at minimum, Masaaki went to find a piece of paper. Continued in Part 2, The Barghest. End. This has been Vampire Queen, Part 1, The Samurai. Written by Sarah King. Narrated by Annie Ellicott. Featuring Jeff Hayes as Masaaki and Shinzato Yusuke, Justin Thomas James as the Barghest, and Zachary Johnson as Theo, Frank, and the rest of the male cast. Proofing by Dory Sachs. Editing and mastering by Richard Smith. Music by Justin Thomas James. Text copyright 2022 by Sarah King. Production copyright 2022 by Soundbooth Theater. A Soundbooth Theater production. Facebook groups are great for meeting other listeners with similar interests and finding more fantastic audiobooks. If you want to find more from Soundbooth Theater, visit the Soundbooth Theater Live group. To stay up to date on upcoming audiobooks, or to see us perform live, sign up for our newsletter at soundbooththeater.com.